We're at 8:40, and so let's start up with item number 12 again. Where we're at with this is our work plan item, and we have heard the staff presentation, and we've heard from our members of the public who had input on this item. And so I'll bring it back to council at this point. Let's start off with any questions that we have, and I'll go ahead and start us off with Councilmember Moore here. And I'll just set us to a few minutes, 3 minutes each for this first go around.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Paul, and I'm not sure who to direct this question to. I actually find this process really confusing. When I look at the existing work plan and then the new items, I see some overlap. So I'm not really sure what to do with that. And some of the items don't show up in the same as high up on the list last year as they're showing up this year. So I'm a little confused about how we integrate these two lists. And then, like a member of the public mentioned, there's the issue with the CIP items. So I personally find it very confusing to be looking at something that could cost over $4 million, the Memorial Park improvements. And then we have some items which are basically ordinance changes, which are not CIP items. So I wonder if the process is making a lot of sense. And then looking at this from the member of the public's standpoint, it kind of feels like people are throwing in items at the last minute and then gathering up as much support they can and kind of lobbying for them. And I really feel particularly for the people with regards to the Carmen Road issue, which wasn't previously on the list, and now we got the lobbying going on for both sides. And if I were a neighbor living in that area, I would find this a bit surprising for process-wise. So if there's some suggestion for how we are supposed to add in items at this point, because I heard things like the vacancy tax, foreign ownership tax, restricting restricting corporate ownership to apartments. I thought all interesting, worth discussing. I don't know if they're going to end up on our list. I wanted a simple facilities inventory and long-range plan for some of our properties like Byrne and Bletch and Stocklemeyer. Seemed like a fairly practical type of item to end up on the list, but we don't seem to be doing that. And we do need some budget policies. You think about budget policies, they don't really rise to the expense of a $4 million project, but how does that tie in and get blended with this list? So if someone could provide some real clear direction for how this process works, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to make a quick comment on that before we bring this to staff commentary. I mean, I think Councilman Moore, if you had a particular item that you wanted on there, I think it should have at least gotten some rating, right? Because we had an opportunity as a council to identify particular items that we would like to see. So if you're talking about an inventory of various city properties, then that should certainly be on there if that's one of our priorities, because that was the whole point of the exercise between our last council meeting and this one, to be able to give the council an opportunity to rate and add those items that we saw would end up being added. I do see your hand is raised again. I'm assuming that you want to respond to that point before I call on staff to follow up on your other parts of your inquiry, or including this one.
Well, just if members of the public are allowed to add in items at tonight's meeting, I would certainly think that members of the council are as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I mean, just, to that point again, I mean, if you have another preference, I mean, I think it could have been added from, within our process here. but to your point, as to adding, items right now, I think we would take that under advisement. I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's a good point. If we're adding something, right now, given the fact that this has been, properly noticed for a couple of meetings now. Um, okay, would anyone on staff like to speak to Councilmember Moore's point before I bring this to Vice Mayor Chow?
Yes. Oh, did you want to speak, City Manager Troop?
Oh, no, go ahead, Katie. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the overlap with existing city work program items, as we presented at the March 8th meeting, some of these projects are multi-year, and so there will be some carryovers. And so those carryover items are included in this list if they did get a rating from council members. In terms of inclusion of CIP, staff has always recommended to keep CIP as a separate process because it does have its own process as part of the budget. It is a little complicated when we start putting them in both places, but it's at the will of the council. And in the past, we have been directed to add some of those CIP projects, and so we've done so. And then also in terms of adding items, Mayor Paul's correct that I think the idea was that council members could add new items during the rating process between March 8th and then this meeting. But of course, at the will of the council, if you would like to add items this evening, you could. I think the intention was to have all new items added by this point, but again, it's at the will of the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And let's go to Vice Mayor Chow.
First, in responding to Councilmember Moore's comment, remember in 2018, Ragnarok Creek Trail was added in June at the council meeting when the former council approved the final budget. That item never appeared even before that. It wasn't even on the agenda. But Common Bridge, this is early. But I agree that it should be on the CIP project list when that comes to the agenda. And I assume that today, when we make a final motion, we will have some revised description and add new items. So we approve a final list that then we will rank after tonight's meeting. Is that the process? Am I understanding that correctly? That we will make a final motion for approve the list, which we will rank after this meeting.
Well, I think, Vice Mayor, that process is largely driven by council, and I understand that staff is basically saying that you have a list in front of you. There are current rankings. We're hearing public commentary, and then with the benefit of that, with our deliberation, we could also, potentially come up with a re-ranking. If I'm understanding that. That preference from staff. And I think, Katie, you had indicated this to us a little while back with regard to, what the advisement was. Were you trying to tell us to rank these while we are in this meeting here, or something else?
I believe so. I think that it would be great if the council feels comfortable and is able to rate them this evening. If you need more time, I think that's okay too. Again, if the council makes some major changes this evening, we will incorporate that and then resend it out for a prioritization.
Oh, I didn't realize we would rank tonight. My understanding was we would rank after tonight's meeting and submit all the ranking to you later.
We're happy to do what council sees fit. We just do need the ratings in sooner than later in order to continue on with our process.
Okay. So my question is inclusive playground. Someone mentioned that, then I realized it's not on the work program. Shouldn't that be, since Memorial Rail Park and Lawrence Mitty Park are on the work program? That's an ongoing project, right?
So, and anyone from Public Works, you can feel free to correct me, but I believe the inclusive playground is part of the CIP program and is being worked on. Again, like I said, we've tried to not have all the CIPs in the city work program, but if the ones you do see are because council has specifically requested they be part of the work program.
But inclusive playground is not a straightforward CIP project. It needs public input and then also selection on what exactly will be placed on the playground. That seems should be a work program item. It's not like you are paving a road or building a bike path. There are more options to select, different features to choose from. That's my question. Anyway, the next one is for those items marked as not include operational, it's great. My understanding is that the staff will implement the project objective as stated in the list as part of a normal city operation, right? Please confirm that.
I think that's a fair question. Can someone please confirm whether that's correct?
Yeah, well, I raised my hand, but no, that would be, if it is an operational item, then we would attribute that to whichever department to work on that as an operational matter. Again, I think as Katie's pointed out, some of these have come on just so that they're pointed out to the staff or the other council or to the public, just to make sure that they are being accounted for. So that's why they're on there.
Yeah, I want to make sure that the project objective is as stated. Right.
So I think for the most part, if there is any differentiation, then it's provided in the considerations column.
If there's any differentiation, it shouldn't be in the consideration, then you should revise the objective. Otherwise, there is confusion. That it's operational, but the objective will be different. I think if the staff...
I don't think that's the case in very many of them. I'm just saying that that's...
So I will assume that the stated objective is the one. Okay, another question. Since it's operational, for example, the artwork in the library and labyrinth kind of project, my understanding then is that the commission could still put the items on their work program. It's not on the council work program. That's good. But the commission should still be able to put on their work program so they can get updates if available without taking extra staff time and give feedback as needed. And in case the commission would like something extra, they then need to come to the council to ask for if they want to expand the project. And of course, they should not give direction to the staff. So is that understating correct?
City Manager Troop.
Mayor, yes, if I understood it correctly. So say like with the labyrinths, if they decided that they wanted to get, as an example, just a group of volunteers to go out and do something that they wanted to go out and clean up one of them or reestablish it in a better format, that would be something that they could do without having to be part of the work plan. Yes. Okay,
that's great to confirm that, because I think there is some confusion that an operational item cannot be on the commission's agenda. So we clear that up. As long as it doesn't take away staff time from implementing the operational item, then the commission can assist as needed. Okay.
Vice Mayor, I need to stop your clock at this point. You've gone on
I'm done. Yeah.
more than 5 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and provide an opportunity across council to get this initial round in. So, Council Member Willie.
Yeah. So the first one, nice presentation, Katie. One quick question for you. You said a survey was done. I'm really big on community engagement. How good or how poor are we doing? How many responses did you get for the survey that was done? And if you don't have it, if you can get it for us.
Yeah, I believe it was 188, but let me just double check. Oh, 185.
Excellent. I mean, to me, that speaks to me. Okay. So now for our work plan for tonight, the first ones, I'd like to keep our list to about 30, maybe plus a few. We've heard in the past, community saying, wow, your work plan is too big, things aren't going to get done. Keeping it to about 30, maybe 34. That being said, it sure seems like there's a couple duplications still existing on the list. The list that I'm using, which was from this week, I'm not sure it's the most recent one. Number 5 is Lawrence Mitty. And number 31, number 26 is Lawrence Mitty. So number 5 got ratings from most, but one didn't. And then Lawrence Mitty got one rating from the one, but none of the others. So again, that sure looks like duplication. Line 5 and line 26. Then line 8 is the homeless jobs program. But when I look at item 31 that says support for unhoused residents, in the description, it says it's the jobs program. So once again, line 31 only had one person that ranked it, and they did not put a number, a rating on line 8, while the other councilmen all did. So I think it was just, wow, the second one before the first one and thought they were done. Community engagement. I'm seeing line 25, and it seems awfully similar to line 27. 25, I gave it a 5. No one else gave it any points. 27, somebody else gave it a 5, and no duplication. So again, it looks like those should really be combined. I'm going back to my statement where I'd like to keep the work plan to about 30, and yet we've got what appears to me 3 duplications. So I'm going to leave my comments at that for now. Hopefully we can clarify that, and then when we work on these in detail, I'll provide comments about descriptions or a couple that I'd like to change my rankings for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Woolley. I will speak to your Lawrence Mitty item. I added that because I thought that we need a project manager. And then for the homeless item, the unhoused item, I added that as well because I thought that would serve well to consolidate a few of the items that were on the prior draft. But that enumerated consolidation, I did indicate which ones I was consolidating when I added it, but that didn't make it over to this draft. So that's how that got in there. So Councilmember Way.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. Actually, I was just going to clarify that too. All the ones with just one person, that's we added because we had the time between last time to this time to add up to 5, I believe. Okay, so that's why we have 14 new items. There might be some overlapping because maybe like Mayor Paul wants to expand it a little bit and have a little difference. So so Councilman Willie, I was going to say what Mayor Paul says. I think we went through this same process last year when we're doing this, and we did give us like 15 minutes. I remember I was doing the ranking and submitted. And so according to the agenda, I did get a message that we are going to do that. But of course, it's up to council that we could always update it and choose to do it later. And I do agree with Katie, we need to do it sooner than later. The public does have the right to add more things on this item because that's their opinion. And I think it's up to council to decide whether we're going to take new things or not. I want to be rational and reasonable because we have so many items. There is, like Councilmember Willie says, we can continue to add things, but the staff is not going to have time to do it. So we really need to prioritize what's the most 10, 20 we want the staff to work on this year. Again, it doesn't mean the things that we are not in it, that's not going to be worked on. It's just not going to be worked on the 2022, 2023 year. So let's be rational and reasonable and not piling a whole bunch of things in there, knowing that the staff cannot finish it, doesn't have the time. And I do want to ask one question. I know Carmen Bridge was on the CIP and it actually maybe was on the work plan to have a little bit of money to work on to resolve the easement or ownership issues, but somehow it was dropped from this year, and Katie just said, so I realized it's on the CIP plan. So I want to say, if we want to consider it on the CIP, I think that should be okay. So I do think we need to really work on our priorities, and so the staff can start to work on things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councilmember Way. And I don't have questions. And so if anyone wants to go back to, follow-up questions, Vice Mayor Chow, I know you had somebody, I think you indicated you're done with your questions at that point. Councilmember Willie, you have your hand raised. Oh, and I do want to, thank you, Councilmember Vice Mayor Chow, for asking your questions with regard to clarifying what something means when it says it's operational. Because, I think I put it in a much more, kind of like simplistic manner. If it says operational, does that mean it's just completely out of our hands? And I do appreciate you pushing on that and asking if the project description is essentially going to be delivered. Because once it becomes operational, we don't have any transparency as to how it's being treated. And so I think that's a very important question to ask. Councilmember Willie, you had your hand raised again. Did you want to follow up on any questions?
Sure. So one thing, I kind of like to separate so that we kind of move on from one discussion to the next. So a couple items I'd like to point out. So CIP items being on the work plan, while I don't think it should be a lot of items, I clearly see a reason for it. And I picked the one like Memorial Park. Yes, it's a CIP item. And our previous city manager said that clearly goes to Parks and Rec. It's not a work plan item. But that means we're not involved in the process. During those past several years, I would ask for regular updates. No, it's not for the city council. Ultimately, I put on the work plan so that we would get updates and we would be involved. Things like the labyrinth, things of potential DOLA, things like possible all-inclusive playground. As we're getting inputs from the community, Parks and Rec is getting input too, but our set of eyes, I think, are very crucial also, and we need to be engaged and not wait for the end of the year when we do the next work plan to find out what transpired. So again, I don't intend to put many things on that are CIP, only ones where I think we need some involvement. 5G is another one where, as a city councilman, I was told it's not your purview. That's Public Works. And yet we got hundreds of emails from residents, and yet no updates and no involvement. And so again, that wound up on the work plan so that we do get involved. So I'll leave it at that. The next couple items, I'd like to kind of maybe change a couple of my rankings. I knew the single-use plastics was important to the mayor, so I did give that a 3, one of my 3s, knowing that it was possibly going to end, but I didn't know that it would truly be finished or not. Since I'm the only one that gave it points, I would like to remove my 3 from single-use plastics. The other one is the mental health line that was in our previous work plan. I thought that was important to Councilman Moore, so I gave that a 3. Again, I was the only one that gave any points to it, so I would like to remove the 3 from line 42, mental health, and line 45, single-use plastics. Now, I do agree with the Councilman Moore about our properties, the Snyder, the Hyman, Byrne, Bletch. So I would like to add an item for the city properties, and I would like to assign it 3 of mine that I have available. And I'll use the other 3 after I hear from the other councilman. But that's eliminate 2 items that I was the only one. So if we have 56, we now have 54. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Councilmember Willie. And Katie, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to Councilmember Willie's?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that if a council member added an item that was not part of the original proposed document, that wasn't circulated to the rest of the council members. So this would be the first time they're seeing it, and that's why there's only one score for those items. So I just want to clarify that for everyone. So it's not that no one thought it was important necessarily. They just haven't had a chance to rate it, and that's why in this portion of the rating is when everyone will get to rate all of the items, including the 14 new ones from the council members.
Yeah, and for Mayor's Cup and the plastic, single-use plastics ordinance, the list was out there at a time when we were uncertain as to when the event would take place, because we were going to hold the event in the new library expansion. And so the new library expansion is going to be opening on April 29th, and we'll be having that event on May 14th. And so that's why I didn't vote for it, because I knew that there was a definitive sunset, and the single-use plastics ordinance, of course, is before us later this evening for first reading. So yeah, I mean, of course, I support the Mayor's Cup, and I appreciate that, you know, our entire council here voted that the top priority for this current fiscal year. So Councilmember Willie, I understand what you're saying there. And, you know, I agree with your removal of those points since it is squarely within our current fiscal year. We have hands raised from Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Wade. Vice Mayor Chow.
Councilmember Wei hasn't spoken yet, has she?
She did speak
She
briefly.
did, okay, yeah. So earlier I was questioning, now it's a comment on the item. So I'm going to share my screen. So my understanding of how today should go is if we have any item to add or revise on their objective, we should propose. And then eventually we would approve a motion to on things that we agree on. Maybe we would rank after that, because for ranking, I think I really need to think about that. So I took some of the up, and then I also learned that in the past 3 years, if we put something on work program, but we didn't specify the language clearly, the outcome would become different from what we had in mind. So I paid more attention to write down specifically what I think this objective is, to clarify some confusion. But for number one, it's not that. Number one is I would like to add the Burn Avenue property to the list, because it was on the council work program 2019 and 20, and then dropped the last year. And I spoke to 2 nonprofit organizations, and they are, so at least one is very interested. Another one I'm talking to tomorrow. I'm hoping they're interested. Tomorrow is Habitat for Humanity, and the other one is Bay Area Housing Corporation. They are very interested in developing memory care units for mentally disabled people. So that location works for them, they think. So I hope that's something we continue to explore. And then number 3, here's the revised one. Objective for DOLA. I would like to add these 2 bullets to clarify the expectation of the council and then resolve some misunderstanding. And I'd like to strike out this sentence from the justification. The justification says ongoing progress to be observed, but before another trial should be established. The trial ended October 2021. Why do I have to wait until that end to start? So I think that's unnecessary. And I would like to add that 2 new trials on locations such as Monta Vista and Memorial Park should start as soon as feasible on those 2 new locations, since the trial at Joliman has ended in October. and each trial should last 6 months. And I'm thinking maybe when they are not next to athlete park, I'll add that language later, unless there are other unexpected situations. I think Jollyman is more complex. 1 year makes sense, but for Monta Vista, Linda Vista Park, my mistake. Linda Vista. If they are not next to an athlete area, that may be simpler. And then I would propose that we form a task force, as I said, with 2 Parks and Rec Commission members and some DOLA champions, so that they can together form rules and help standardize this process to facilitate and also keep order. So that's my proposal. I have other items that I have written how I want the objective to be done. So should I go over them or?
What's your time estimate for having to go over your proposal here?
They are all, I have all made the change that item like Cupertino store, I changed the language to be a little certain that fine arts commission will create a plan to select items and designs so that the art will represent the characteristic of Cupertino. And then the
Vice Mayor,
senior strategy, I'd like to add that we should have an in-depth survey of senior services as proposed by the age-friendly Cupertino, so that we assess the needs, especially for the missing middle seniors who don't use the senior center or don't qualify for West Valley Community Services. And I think we should address the service needs of seniors who plan to age at home because they can afford the pricey senior homes, senior rental senior facilities. So that's, yeah, more I can talk about more later. I'll let other people go.
okay, well, let me ask you, Vice Mayor, the question again, about how much content do you have, and provide a time estimate for how long this would take to go through? Because it looks like what you're scrolling through.
I have 4 more items, that's all.
Okay.
It looks more because I copied the original content and really did an edit on that. So it's clear.
Let me go. Chris, our city attorney, do you have a comment at this point that you want to make before I go to the other council members?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If I may, I just wanted to remind the council that that what's been agendized is priority setting, and I would encourage the council members to avoid too much substantive discussion of the items, because that hasn't been agendized.
What?
So Chris, if you could perhaps, clarify what you mean by substantive as opposed to prioritization of the items.
So what's been agendized is setting priorities for the work program for next year. To the extent that the council members can, and I understand this is challenging, I think you should try to avoid delving too deeply into the specifics of the policies, because the specific policy items have not been agendized. What's been agendized is the agenda setting and work exercise of developing the work program. So thank you, Mayor.
So which part do you think we have discussed is a specific policy?
I just want everybody to keep that in mind. I don't think there's a need to call attention to any specific issue.
Oh, so right now what we have shared is okay. We are talking about the high level objective, right?
Yes, I think we should try to discuss high level objectives.
Okay.
Okay, great. Let's go to Councilmember Wei.
Thank you, Mayor Paul, and thank you, Vice Mayor, for your details. But I do have, maybe it's not an issue of whether we should talk about it. Is I need time to absorb all your writings, because I just can't have looking at it right now and then say, what are we going to do in the details, like Attorney Chris says, because those details I think still need to be vetted with input from the council and from the public. So I want to repeat back, I think we really need to do our prioritize, and then the details can come later.
These are not, can you guys respond to clarify?
Please go ahead.
So these are not details. All I'm saying is, as part of the senior strategy, we should do a in-depth survey because the survey this year is too superficial. I could have just said it. It's very simple. and then that we should also address the needs of seniors who plan to age at home, because that's important for part of the senior strategy we have. I could have said that, but to help the staff, I have written it so that when we propose that as a motion, it's clear. If I just said it verbally, how do you make that a motion, right? So I'm planning that this will be a motion. So if you agree with that, then we would have a more, because I assume we will have a revised list with some of these revised objectives at the end that we approve of.
Okay,
Of course,
let's
you can say
go
you
on.
don't agree with adding those. That's fine.
Okay, thanks, Vice Mayor Cha. Let's go on to Councilmember Moore.
I believe Councilmember Wei had her hand up before me. If I'm wrong, I will go. Okay, I'm not hearing that. Okay.
The order that I have is you and then Councilmember Wei. I mean, if you want to have Councilmember Wei go first, yeah, that's perfectly fine.
No, I've been quiet for a while. Okay, so I still find this process a bit of the sausage making and understanding how the old work plan works with the new one. I'm still having problems with that, and I wanted to hear a little bit of information about that. It's still as clear as mud to me. And then the next steps that we're moving on to, I don't quite understand them, but I do want to see added on, and I think it does get into policy. I want to see added on that we have a plan for the city properties. When a council member then says, I want this property to become this, then you're getting into more of a little more detail than I would want, because I frankly don't agree with the suggestion that I heard made. So I would like to see that. With regards to the multiple suggestions from the public regarding, I don't know how to word it, but it was like the vacancy tax or the foreign ownership tax. If that could be kind of swirled in together as strategies to assist with home ownership of some form, or I don't know how to kind of get a more generalized way to describe those suggestions, that might make an interesting topic of discussion, having a study session for what we can do. Do we agree with having a vacancy tax? Is that something we're interested in? Do we agree with the foreign ownership? That could possibly be something on the list. So I want to know what our endpoint is tonight. Are we going to amend the list? There are items on the list which I kind of thought we should have crossed out because staff said not included. And to me, I just went through and scratched those out, but I would need the council to look at those. And then there's a handful of them and decide if council agrees to remove them. And I would like to understand a little bit more about some of those not included suggestions, why they were, if Katie could go through real quickly and say, there's a handful, and say why briefly the idea was to not include, because we can really crop down our list pretty fast if we agree that we agree with staff on those items. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. With regard to those not included items, I will note that on some of them, staff does have a reason under the not included designation. On some of them, it just states not included. And so if we were to follow up on your suggestion and ask for clarity on those items, Katie, are you in a position to be able to speak to those items readily? In other words, do you have the file in front of you, and are you able to access those handful of items where there's a not include, you know?
If you'd like me to go one by one, I can. I think as you've mentioned, where there was, if it's operational, we've mentioned it, or if it, it's just staffing and bandwidth constraint, it's been mentioned. There was one that, it's already actually been implemented. That was had to do with, I think,
Okay, so
maximizing solar. Yeah.
Yeah, let me go through this then. On number 8, the homeless jobs program, it has a consolidated 11 score and it says not include. What's the reason for that?
It looks like it is because additional resources and further coordination will be necessary to extend. So this looks like it's a resource constraint.
Okay, and then line 17, the 5G ordinance, there's a not include on that. What's the reason for that?
So in terms of the 5G, I believe that's going to be done this year. I think this 5G portion of the item was just to include aesthetics. And from my understanding, and perhaps Public Works has more information on this, aesthetics were already discussed in part of certain agreements that have already been developed and gone through council approval. And so it was not deemed, it was deemed as it was already worked on. Yeah, it looks like we have Assistant Director Chad Mosley.
I mean, with respect to the aesthetics, there are aesthetics that are in the original agreements that were approved by council back in 2016, 2017.
Okay, so let me go on to items 34 and 37. You have not include operational for both the labyrinth program and catalytic converter theft. So going back to your prior discussion with Vice Mayor Chow, if it states not include operational, what does that mean? Does that mean it's going to be operationally delivered as described? Or does that mean this general category or the like is something that's operational and we don't really have a sense of whether it's going to be delivered as described?
So this one for catalytic converter, we explain what we mean in terms of its operational. The sheriff's office incorporates much of the recommended action into regular operations. The block leaders, they have a regular update at our public safety commission meetings. We do now also publish information on our website, and they do share tips and tricks on how to prevent these crimes from happening. But again, like we said, if we're saying not include, that's our recommendation. If council would still like to include it, we can, and put more of an emphasis on doing more than what is operational, right? Doing more than what we're doing now.
Okay. And I think that indirectly answers my question here, because this project description actually has a number of specific descriptions that weren't covered by what you were just describing. So, I'm taking that to mean that the item description is not something that is going to be of necessity delivered just because there's an indicator in this spreadsheet that says not include operational. And I note that you didn't address the labyrinth program, not include operational. I assume that means the same thing, correct? That because it has that designator, that does not indicate that the program or the item, I should say, as described, is going to be delivered operationally. Is that correct?
Right. I would say that it's more what we've described in the considerations column as to here's what we do on this. But if you'd like to spend more time on this in this way, we can.
Okay. Line 39, impacts to school. That's to schools rather. That's a not include. Did you have a reason for that?
Oh, I think I'm gonna ask if our Director of Community Development could speak to this one.
Okay, Ben, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when we're looking at this is potentially it could be determined as part of the housing element sites discussion. I think additionally, the impacts to schools is a little challenging for the city to sort of participate in. I believe there's some state laws that prevents the city from considering fiscal impacts. So that's why we indicate this as something that's not included for right now.
Okay, I'll note that the project description is assessment or score as a net positive or net negative impact to services, schools, particularly of a project. So it doesn't really look like it's a fiscal evaluation. It's really more of a kind of consideration from the city's perspective as to what the net impact would be of a particular project. So, okay, well, I'm going to go on at this point to the next not include. That's the visitor center, line 46. What's the reason for the not include recommendation here?
This one is, we think with our ongoing Cupertino store item, we think that finishing that item would be prudent, and then we can work on the visitor center. But again, these are just our recommendations, and if the council wants to prioritize this against other items, then that's something that we would definitely be looking at.
Well, understood. Just trying to get a little bit more clarity on the non recommendations here.
Yeah.
So we're on item 50 now, the privately owned EV chargers. The description is explore options for private businesses to open up privately owned electric vehicle chargers to the public when not in use by employees. That says not include operational. So does that also apply if it's not include operational here? That doesn't mean it's going to get done operationally. Is that correct?
This one, so in our comments, we're saying that this can definitely be explored as part of our REACH codes update, which is happening operationally. It happens every 3 years on the code cycle.
So this is really kind of a gray description, right? I mean, it could happen, it might not happen. Maybe it's just going to be completely ignored. I mean, just to be fair about the description here, not include operational could mean a whole gamut of things, correct?
Right. That's why we tried to add the notes in terms of what is meant by that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Under 51, I see a not include operational. Let me just go on, not to belabor the point that it may, be a whole range, and refer to the other notes. 52, the festival that is run by the Fine Arts Commission. The staff recommendation is not include. What's the reason for that?
It says that Fine Arts Commission previously worked with the current festivals to have space for fine arts. There's this recommendation because they can work with existing festivals, and to put on an entire festival just in addition will require significant staffing.
Okay, and I'll note that the last 3 items are also not includes. Those are the Regional Transformative Transit Projects Initiative, Solar Generation Maximization, and Young Artist Scholarships. They all received a sum total of 1 point, and they're respectively not include operational, not include, and not include operational. With, I think your reference is essentially going to be to those different columns of the spreadsheet as well, in terms of staff's, reasons for the recommendation that they have. So let me go to Councilmember Way, and before I do that, let me just say that actually comprises the entirety out of this list of the items that staff was recommending not to include. And so it's relatively fast to go through that, through this list. In terms of the consolidation of items, I will note that Lawrence Mitty Park was something that was fairly highly rated. The proposal to add a dedicated staff member to be the project manager for the park, that's a 5 by me. I have since seen that staff is, making some pretty significant movement on that. And so I'm inclined to move, my 5 to the other part of Lawrence Mitty Park that I think would actually bump that up to a consolidated, highest sum rating. But let's move on here. I think we're making some decent progress overall, and hopefully we'll converge to a workable point. Councilmember Way, actually, I see Jim, your hand is raised. Did you want to
Yeah,
speak?
that was gonna say.
I apologize, Mayor. I was lazy, forgot to turn down.
Oh, no worries. Okay, great. Councilmember Way.
Okay, so I'm so glad Mayor Paul sort of cleared a lot of things, because I do believe when staff list very clearly, some of them they're not are not operational but not included, is because of a lot of staff constraint, right? So the thing I want to clarify is I do have an issue adding things tonight, because if we add things tonight, that means the public hasn't seen it, we haven't seen it, the staff hasn't rated whether it's large, medium, or small. So it means that we can't rate them, or we have to open up to public comment next time. So I think adding things tonight is an issue. I don't know if Attorney Chris can comment on that. The second is, I really don't want to get into details. For example, really, I really appreciate all the details Vice Mayor made. But for example, the DOLA to be Lena Vista and Memorial Park. I mean, we might have an argument from, why don't we do the other two first? Or it's 6 months, why don't we do a year? So I really think we need to prioritize things and go into the details of how to operate it. So tonight really is to prioritize. And the staff recommendation is not, it's just their recommendation. We can always say, oh, we want to put this on the work plan. We think it's important. So the rating from us is really important. So I just want to clarify. Details, I don't think we should work on it tonight. And we really need to consider staff time. If staff recommends everything, we're still going to rate it. Staff choose not to recommend something is because they don't have staff time, or it's already being done, or they can do it. For example, anyway, some of the things are already being done. And so even without us knowing it, and then so I think we really need to get onto ratings right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Let's go on to Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So I'd like to see the items removed, if out of that not include list, if that's possible. If we can come to some agreement to crop them off and have an adjusted list. I do know last year items were added, at the last minute and ended up there. So I don't personally have a problem with seeing something new placed on the list. So what I'd like to see is if we can get to some consensus on what the list is, and then we have some time to rank what's remaining, and please combine the Lawrence MIDI items, which were identified as having some duplication by Councilmember Willie. He mentioned a couple of items which have some duplication here, which I would like to see put together, so we're not looking at the same item and then we throw points at different things, which really should be just one. And there was one item with regards to the license plate readers, and it was listed as being an extra large project, which is kind of a different, it's like, bigger than everything else. So I'm wondering, shouldn't we get, if we were to look at this, shouldn't we get some, before we rank it and agree with it, shouldn't we get some information from Captain Urena about this, about the need, rather than, it just feels like we're jumping into something without having guidance. And so I'm personally hesitant about it. I want to know what are the statistics about this? Is this a good idea? I don't know. And how many, how much, what are we getting ourselves into? So for this one, I would personally like some more information, just even to understand how to rank it. But so like I said, I'd like to have this list culled and trimmed up, and then we go and rank and come back at the next meeting with it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. And let's go on, before we go to Councilmember Woolley. Katie, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to the last comments?
Yeah, just really quickly, in terms of the duplicated items, the reason that they were, if they were truly kind of duplicative or something that was very, very close, we did our best to combine them. In these instances, what's being proposed is significantly different than what the original item was. And so we just wanted to make sure that council can decide which one they want to move forward with. And so that's why they're separated. And then for the resident engagement and engagement plan, for example, those are two distinct items. One's developing the plan, one is increasing the engagement via, and it has some good strategies in there. And so they are technically different items. We can combine them, but like, for example, homeless jobs is one singular program versus support for the unhoused. It has a much larger scope that we want to understand more. But I just want to put that out there. That's why they're not currently combined. And we would love some feedback or direction from council on how to move forward with those.
Great. All right, thanks, Katie. Let's go on to Councilmember Woolley.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with the last one there. So the support for unhoused residents, I'm fully fine with it being different, but on the copy that I have, it has the jobs program listed on it. So if we remove that from it, I'm okay, then they're distinctly different. If the jobs is part of that, then I do think they should be somehow combined and tied together. I'll leave it at that. And next one is if Katie could put item 17 up. I don't really want to get into the details, but I think there's an important point to be bringing out. Number 17 is the 5G. And the other that I'll mention is I would like one added tonight, which is the city-owned properties, and put a 5 on it. So when I pushed to have this put on this work plan, it was not about aesthetics. It was about staff responding to the community's concerns. And the community sending us emails about cells that are going to be right next to their bedroom, things of that nature. When we talked about this, to the best of my memory, I even showed a concern sheet that I created that said what resident, what location, and then it had a box for a picture for a Google map picture to show where that would be relative to their house. And then it had a statement, what other possible locations can be looked at? 2 case in points. One resident over at Three Oaks Park was going to get a cell in front of his house. Contacted us. I went out and met with him. He had not been met with by anyone on city staff. So he said, I met with Verizon, and Verizon said, we're happy to put the cell on the other side of the street on the park side. Bingo. Second one, Peter Chu, who actually spoke at the city council meeting, was going to have one right in front of his bedroom. And Peter Chu and I met with Verizon, and Verizon moved the cell out on Miller Avenue. That was the intent of this one, making sure that the city has a process to look at the concerns by the residents, see what other options there are, record it and give it a number so that the resident or his neighbors can call up city staff and get an update. A month, 2 months down the road, what happened? What were other ones that were looked at? As opposed to, well, we don't know. It needs to be logged in and given a number and do a little bit of research. It was not about aesthetics. I think that got morphed by somehow inside of the city. So I would like that description to be put back, that it's about addressing the community concerns and the process. Vice Mayor Chow also talked about collecting the community's concerns into a larger table. I don't know how far we expand this, but addressing the community concerns. So that one, plus adding the property one, and I would be good for, bringing it back to us then with re-ranking. But I do think this has moved pretty far down the field so far. So thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, well, thank you, John, and just to get a kind of a straw poll of your opinion on it. So the not includes, are you in general agreement with the staff recommendations there?
Not at this time.
Not this time.
If they're ranked, like I say, I'd like to see us stay at about the 30 level. I would be hesitant to remove anything that is within the first 30. I was very happy to see that this Council of Five put their high priority items, and those are in the top 30. All of our fives are in the top 30. Almost all of our threes are in the top 30. So to remove something that we feel passionate about for our community at this point, if staff wants to come back later on and say, number 70, I will bring up where Councilman Moore and the license plate readers, I agree, it shouldn't be an extra large one. The resident who spoke tonight, Jason, sent emails, and I emailed back and forth with him, and he said that several other cities like Los Altos, like he gave the example, already have done license plate readers. To leverage what they've already done for our IT, for Bill and his group, to simply bring us back in 6 months with a review of what's been done and what it would take to do something similar, what it would take to do something similar in our community, not do it. And then we kind of tell them based on how much money and how much time it could go, and it may not be until the next year's work plan. But no, we're not trying to build an aircraft carrier over the course of this next 12 months. No.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Councilmember Woolley. And I do notice that a couple of staff members have their hands raised. Jim and Katie, did you want to speak to these comments at this point?
I can just speak to, I just want to clarify 5G. So Councilmember Willie, your item for 5G for the current fiscal year is underway. It's happening. The 5G ordinance and the reporting that you're talking about has already been worked on. It's going to come to council soon. I just want to clarify that that's not on this list because that item is going to be done this fiscal year. The item that's on this list was proposed by the Planning Commission, and the objective is what they proposed because they wanted to talk about aesthetics, I think.
Okay, and Jim, did you have a comment on this as well? You're muted, Jim.
Sorry, I thought I had done that. No, I was one, what Katie just said. The other one too, about the a budget process where I have in as one of the community, sort of a community, I don't have the proper name, community outreach person that's in my head at the moment for doing different types of outreach, such as with the 5G. The other one too, just throwing it out there from, Councilmember Willie had said the one item about, making sure that we have at least the 30, but, maybe having a motion just to remove the not includes unless council wants to keep certain ones, and pick the ones that are somewhat duplicative, and are they ones we want to keep or combine? And then if you did have any additional ones to add at this time, and then we can compile it back into a new list and have everyone, we can, once we get that compiled, finalized, we can compile it and then send it out for the ranking. Just trying to help move that along. I don't know if that made any sense.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim. And let me go to, I see hands raised by Vice Mayor Chow as well as Councilmember Moore. Before we go back to Vice Mayor Chow, let me make a couple of follow-ups here. I have a couple of items that I want to make a comment or a clarification on. Item number 6, we have the Cupertino store implementation. I was the one who added a council member proposal. And while I do appreciate the attempt to consolidate this, the original objective did specify the Cupertino store being at the Chamber of Commerce. But when we had this on our work plan last year, all right, and so my added proposal here was to kind of remind us really of what we had asked staff to put on our work plan, and it was to explore various options for where we would put this. And somehow it seems to have morphed into a description where we would definitively place it at the Chamber of Commerce. I'll note that we're still in the middle of our fiscal year. We still have a full quarter left, or almost a full quarter. And my proposal that you see on the latter part of this item here, I think it's item 6, is just to remind us that we were actually supposed to be exploring at this point various locations this could be. And so I just suggested Quinlan Center, Library, City Hall as potential alternate locations. And so, to the extent that we're still in the midst of our fiscal year, I would say that's my first comment, that we should be following up on what's articulated in the current work program, or should be. And then the other thing is that this seems to be a bit, if not in direct conflict, it's not really that consistent though, with what the revised objective description is, which does identify the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how we ended up winnowing on this one particular location, but I would like to ask, to the extent that we have these kind of conflicting, consolidated, directions, which one are we choosing if we end up putting our votes here? Because, I'll note that, for this is a consolidated 12 points, which I guess, took my 5 points and added it to other 7. But I note that we didn't take my 5 points for Lawrence Mitty, which is clearly in support of the project, and added to, item number, I guess, what is it? Like where's Lawrence Mitty here? I think
5 and 26.
Yeah, so number 5 doesn't end up getting added to, those 13 points don't get added to the other 5, which would give it 18 points actually. So and I'm just wondering like how this is done in terms of trying to adhere to a consistent process.
Right. I can speak to that. So for the Cupertino store, in reviewing your item, it was kind of exactly as you described. It's essentially sounded like a reminder on what we're currently doing in this fiscal year. We're just referencing the item as adopted was called Cupertino store at Chamber of Commerce. That's what it is in our current work program. So that we're just using that as a reference. It's not saying it's going to be at the store. We do plan to provide you more than just the chamber as an option. So that's, hopefully there's no conflict there. But in terms of, we tried to combine it in the revised objective, and I do think we tried to capture all aspects from everyone's. The reason why this one was easily combined was while there was additional wording, the intent was the same. There were no real differences. We were already looking at other locations. The fact that there were some specific locations suggested was helpful, but it didn't really change what we were already doing with this item. So that's why they were combined. Because then we tried to actually, this is why the number in the staff report went from 57, and then this list is actually 56 items, because we thought we would keep all of the council member proposals separate. But when we tried to fill in the information for it, we realized it was really the same information. And so we're like, they should be combined versus some of the other ones, such as Lawrence Mitty, the idea of adding the project manager, adding additional sessions with council to review timeline, that would actually change some of the aspects of the project and potentially make it more expensive, other things. And so they were not identical. So that's the reasoning there.
Okay, and then for line 31, you had mentioned wanting a little bit more clarity on this support for the unhoused item, which was proposed by me. I guess this is an opportunity to provide that clarity. So what kind of clarity is it that you wanted to receive? I thought that it was a fairly, extensive description. Essentially, I'm saying if we have these various items related to the unhoused, and county measure A dollars are basically supposed to be for trying to provide that type of housing, you know, why not put that into what is effectively a consolidated approach, you know, instead of, you know, homeless jobs program, in addition to, you know, something that, you know, kind of partners with the county to identify a 5-year plan that sort of, I guess, kind of piggybacks off of that. I mean, why not look at what we can be doing internally, right? I mean, if there are opportunity sites, or at least, you know, one or possibly two available for housing for the unhoused or transitional housing, you know, why not look at that in a consolidated manner? I mean, I'm not going to read my description here, but I mean, it's fairly, you know, it's fairly specific. And I will note that there's no recommendation. There's no recommendation to include or not include. So, I mean, if that's the case, then what's the clarity that's needed? As it sits, it has 5 points. It has my 5 points because I think it's a, you know, worthy thing to, you know, try to support. But so what else needs to be done in order to evaluate this? Ben, Director of Community Development, you know, Fu, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think your points are well taken. I think in looking at initial evaluation of this item, the initial reaction is that the city plan and homelessness is already an item that's progressing, and then sort of piggybacking on the county's plan that the council approved. The homeless jobs program finalized as this past or current fiscal year. So, you know, these are kind of parallel projects that are already sort of in the works. So the clarification on that is not really clear on how we can merge them into one particular specific plan. Again, because they're sort of already parallel projects that are going towards the finish line already. I think your objectives are very, very detailed and it's great directive. I think that's sort of where we're sitting on right now is those items are already in the works.
Well, you know, I'll tell you how I think about this. You know, I think about this from the perspective of what gets us closer to getting supportive services faster that are, you know, that's done in a way that's, you know, thoughtful and makes people come to the table and really think about these particular issues. You know, and as described in these, you know, couple of different items, I don't really see a whole lot happening, you know, in the next, you know, few years other than having perhaps a, you know, a paper or two. But I do know that we have, you know, some Measure A funds are dwindling. You know, I know we have sites, you know, so I mean, maybe it's too much of a layperson's perspective. But as a layperson, I have been around the city for a while. And so I think I have a sort of a sense of how some of these things get done and what could help facilitate it. So I'm not really sure where this lives. You know, there's not a recommendation to include or not include. So I don't know really how to take guidance in that regard. And perhaps there is no staff guidance on this. My final question before I go to Councilmember Vice Mayor Chow, item number 54, Regional Transformative Transit Projects Initiative. I see it as a non-include operational. It did get 1 point. You know, perhaps let me ask, you know, who assigned it that point? Was that perhaps my point that I assigned, or can someone you know, clarify that?
Is this okay, Chris? Am I allowed to reveal?
Well,
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. It was Councilmember Willie.
Oh, Councilmember Willie. Okay. So Councilmember Willie, did you want to reassign that point as well, or was there a reason that you have that kind of included in your, you know, your 13 1-point items?
Yeah, 13, you know, the 1 points are, you know, kind of the lowest of our priority other than 0. I would be in favor of moving it to something that gets broader support from the other council.
Right. Okay. Okay, great. Let's go to Vice Mayor Chow. Vice Mayor, you know, I realized you had 4 other items that you wanted to provide some, you know, specific detail on. Kind of what I'm running up against is Councilmember Way's comment on this, where she expresses the the desire to sit down with what you're saying and kind of absorb it, you know, a little bit better. And I think, you know, that's a reasonable point, well taken, that kind of is consistent with the other expressed sentiments that, you know, if you have a new item, you know, perhaps we should be a little bit more leery about adding items at this point. I'll just tell you what's, you know, kind of, you know, processing through my mind right now is to how to deliver what you're describing as some of these, you know, pretty specific and extensive changes in some instances to our process here. So, I mean, it does look like we have a list. I mean, we could be consolidating, we could be taking some stuff off. But in terms of, you know, adding at this point or editing, you know, based upon a motion, you know, I wonder whether it might make more sense to, you know, try to figure out a better way to incorporate that, or just nix it all together. I mean, maybe we go to the pleasure of the council at this point. I mean, you know, I will say that, you know, I'd be willing to sit down and get a better sense of the specifics of what you're, you know, trying to propose. And I do think that kind of prioritizing before we know those specifics, you know, is a bit problematic as well, right? Because you're proposing that we change some of these, you know, top level descriptions, right? So
to help me understand, so staff proposed a list of items with descriptions.
mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to change one word. When should we edit that? Not ever?
The time would have been,
what's the process?
The time would have been when we were providing our own modifications, right? When we had
that
like
is no.
Yeah.
I mean, I provided a lot of comments in my submission, but they were not integrated. That's why I think staff is one person, right? How would they know that they should do that? That doesn't make sense. Therefore, today is the only chance, I think, that I could say, okay, this item description needs to add a little to be more clear. The reason is also from the past 3 years, when we are not clear, things doesn't go the way we intended to. And the staff, when they write the description, they don't, a lot of times the misunderstanding is not intentional, but the misunderstanding is still there. So I'm trying to correct that so we won't go to come the end of the year and then find out, oh, how come it didn't get implemented the way we had intended. And for example, the DOLA, okay, I agree that maybe we shouldn't identify specific sites, but a very important thing has to be clarified. The current trial ended in October. The staff recommended to continue to observe for 1 full year, which is fine. But then the staff's recommendation is not to start another two trials or one trial until this 1 year observation at Joliman is finished. I think that's a misinterpretation of the council direction. Because they are telling the DOLA people, the council said not to start any trial after all this data is collected until next October. We never said that. I think that's a misinterpretation of council direction, not intentional, but it's a misinterpretation. So my edit there was trying to clarify that.
Right. Well, but again, I mean, there was that opportunity to go ahead and provide a project title and a project description, right, and to assign points to it, you know, prior to this. And I'm not sure what you mean by, you know, you provide comments, because if we went ahead and added lines to the, you know, to the table, then that opportunity would have been there to put that description.
What opportunity?
I think it was March 16th that we're supposed to email back our ratings. I forget.
Yeah, I had my comments there.
Yeah.
But then how can I add, but that comments, now I'm integrating those comments into specific edit so I can get your approval.
Well, I'm just saying that whatever language was there at that point should still be there right now, right? I mean, to kind of morph the project description at this point, it puts us in a bit of a.
Now, at this point, when should we change a project, revise the project description? Tell me when.
On March 16th,
Not today.
you should have added it to a different line and said, this is what so for example,
You
for
mean
me,
I should make that a new project and add a new description? That I never understood that.
okay, well,
it's not a new project. It's just, I want to clarify the staff justification. That's a misunderstanding of council direction. That's not a new project.
Can you get through your additional items in, say, 6 minutes? Can you do that for your other 4 items? Just, I'm trying to be cognizant of time here.
Okay, but I guess first I have some comment. The item number 38, hybrid meeting for commissions. It didn't have any include or not include. It's not labeled. What does that mean?
I can answer that. I think we were struggling in terms of whether to recommend or not recommend. Really, it's a policy decision and a staffing thing. So we just need to know what to do and then get the appropriate staffing levels and training and implementation and policies in place.
Okay, so that right now doesn't have a label, just so you know. And then homeless jobs program, I think it's ranked number 8. The reason for not including is odd. It's that additional resources are needed if we extend. Isn't that what the priority setting is for? If the city council wants that priority, then we'll allocate additional resource and work with a partner. Or is it because the current provider doesn't want to continue the program anymore? If that's the case, then it's a different situation. I don't know.
Yep, Vice Mayor, and through the mayor, if I may respond. So we're indicating that as not to include because there's additional funding and resource and this council needs to consider. So it's not really that us making that decision to include, not include, but council decides that's the item that you want to continue for this fiscal year. We can certainly do that. They're just an additional cost that council has to consider.
That's the whole point of having this meeting, right? Then it seems then that item should be also blank, that you are not making a decision, you are letting the council decide. Maybe that you should have that not labeled then.
If I might, so this again, that column is the staff recommendation to include or not include. We provided kind of the reasoning, and it's really up to council, but it's still in the list, right? Because it's always council's prerogative to rate it and say we want it included anyway. So we did our best where we could to make a recommendation. In some of these, it was really like I could see it going both ways. So
yeah,
I think
fine.
in this sense,
so, Katie,
there's just
that's fine. So yeah, actually I wrote here, thank Katie, I keep forgetting. This is really, really a lot of work. I actually like the process. There is some confusion, but then I think we are improving, it gets better. So there is a chance for us to provide more input. So thank you for putting all the work, pulling all the data together. It's really a lot of work, really appreciate that. And so homeless jobs program, I would hope that we include a partner with county for a sustainable program besides a city standalone program. So if it's West Valley, we first work with West Valley, fine, but eventually I think we want to partner with the county. Then I think Cupertino store, I remember last year when we had the discussion, we were also thinking of Torrey Avenue because that was just purchased and there is a possibility there, and that's not included there right now. For items to remove, not only the not included, I think there were 2 items. John said that he was the only person who has points and he wants those removed. I forgot which 2, so those probably should be removed. And this is another comment on Lawrence and Lawson School Bikeway. There is only 1 ranking of 3 from 1 member. The justification is also, that doesn't make sense. The justification basically applies to all bike project and all walk audit project. And my comments last time is also I put in my spreadsheet is that we should have all the unfinished work audit items, have bike and ped commission rank them and then decide which one we should proceed. It shouldn't be one of someone pushing this, someone pushing that. So that justification especially didn't really justify this one particular project. So if the council member who rented 3 is okay with that, I think we should remove this item also. Then let me try and finish my comment. So I am proposing, I'll first go to the new item first.
No, Vice Mayor Chow, no, let me go back to the other council members because you made really extensive comments here. And then, you know, I did ask you to limit it to a particular amount of time. So let me go to Councilmember Willie.
Okay.
We'll go to Councilmember Way, and then, you know, and then we'll circle back. Councilmember Willie?
Yeah, so Katie, you are correct. In the description of the current 5G work plan, it's currently item number 3 on the existing one. It says, revisit 5G, including but not limited to recording, responding to complaints, transparency on existing applications, and says that it hopes to be done by September of this year. Now, we've had updates. To my memory, I haven't had updates that have given me input that this is on schedule, on track. And so the importance of having 5G in the current 22-23 year is to make sure that we do in fact take care of our community with respect. Projects don't always go as planned. Sometimes they'll end early, sometimes later. I would be disappointed if September comes and goes and these things that we mentioned tonight are not in place. If a resident in September emails us about a cell next to their children's bedroom, and I'm not able to say, contact this person, they're going to record your issue, they're going to look at alternatives, they're going to contact Verizon, then I'm going to be the one doing it again. And so that to me is the reason this would stay on our work plan. If we had gotten periodic updates that said, hey, we're on schedule, this is happening, it's going to be done, then I wouldn't have felt a need to put a focus on it. So I'll leave it at that if you talk to staff and find out where do they feel they are, and do they really feel confident that their current resources, the current dollars are in fact going to bring it to closure. So with that, I think I'm good for tonight. And if we get an updated list, I'll double check my rankings, hopefully move the 2 that I took 3s away from to Cupertino properties, and the other 3 would go to the mayor's one for homeless services, so that I'd have 3 points adding to his 5 for homeless services. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councilmember Willie. Jim, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak or?
Oh, yes, thank you. I was just going to say for Councilmember Willie that our city attorney, Chris, and our assistant public works director, Chad, have been working on that. I believe Chad has the draft, I just lost my brain, the draft ordinance in his office, his shop right now. There's Chad. If you can give a quick update how that might be coming.
Yeah, it's in my court right now. Bless Matt Morley for coming in and taking a bunch of work off of my plates. This is one of my priorities, and I'm hoping I can have the ordinance ready for council consideration come May, potentially June, but I'm hoping to have it done this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let me just make a quick comment here. If this is projected to end in September 2023, it probably should have made its way into this current list. because that is going into the next fiscal
So,
year.
so the estimate is that it will be done this fiscal year. That date needs to be updated.
Yeah, well, we
Our
have no way of
apologies.
knowing that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what's
Well,
written in
and
the
yeah,
materials,
I understand.
right? Okay. So let's go on to Councilmember Way, then Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I'm going to be really brief for why I was a little uncomfortable with, I'm glad we asked the staff why they included, not included, and some of them, they don't make recommendations. I think the staff really tried to make it very clear why they do that. And then it really is up to the council. The council really wants to do it. Even the staff says not include, we can also include it. So I feel that our staff is really working in yeoman's job and then try to make recommendations, but some of them, they don't make it. For why I thought we were saying, if you don't make a recommendation, why don't you make recommendations? If you make recommendations, why do you do this? But I get it. We want to make it clear. So I really think we should, yes, like Councilmember Willie and everybody agree, and I think Councilmember Moore says, let's eliminate some and then really work on our priorities. The details can really come and then we can work on it. And I still think if we add something now, it has to go through a public process. I mean, the public doesn't know, we don't know. So we do have a lot of work plans and we need to narrow it down and be really rational about it. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't make this year's project is not going to come back. It's always in the back of our mind. It's always there, and the staff has the list, so we can always bring it back. I really hope that we can accomplish something tonight.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Way. And Jim, you still have your hand up. Did you want to speak to anyone?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to multitask. Sorry.
All right, great. Councilmember Moore?
Okay, well, it sounds like I don't have any support for the council to take care of the properties that we own and come up with some sort of plan for it. That's too bad. That's how it goes. So I would like it if we could at least take a vote on the property, not the properties, the projects that had the not include ranking, and remove those off the list if we all agree with doing that. If there's some that you want to hold on to, please go ahead and do that. But I think we need to move on, make that decision, cull the list. And then we can take the list and rank it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. I do want to be fair to Councilmember Willie. He was frantically raising his hand physically when you were indicating that you didn't get any support for the city properties. I actually explicitly remember him saying specifically that he will support your proposal with the 3 points that he had removed from another item.
Mayor Paul, through the mayor, may I add to this comment? I was told I can't add anything to the list, so I don't get any support because that would be adding an item to the list. So that's the problem we have with this. So we didn't really entirely agree to a process here. And so that's why you ended up with members of the public trying to add items because they didn't know that the list is done. You can't add at the last minute. And that's our process. I didn't know that was.
I didn't know that.
And we're a group, we should be deciding the process together. And I think honestly, before we stepped into the process, we should have had a goal setting session where we talked about how we're going to prioritize and go through this. So it's not after 10 o'clock and we're trying to figure it out. So kind of prior planning, et cetera. So that's why I say I didn't get support. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, let me respond to that. I mean, Councilmember Moore, I'm not sure if you actually did hand in a ranking sheet by March 16th. But, I think to insinuate that you didn't receive support from the council on this particular item, and then now to say that it's because you think that you're not allowed to add anything right now, I don't find that there's, really a lot of accuracy in that. You did, in fact, receive support for it. And if you didn't actually hand in a ranking, then you forewent an opportunity to add that within the process that we had. And so I think that should be made, explicit. And, frankly, I'm not really sure if we have these opportunities to add and you don't avail yourself of them, what ends up happening, and what we're supposed to be doing at this point. And we haven't made a decision. No motion has been put on the table saying that you can't add an item. I'll note that our members of the public did ask for 3 things that we haven't discussed yet. Our members of the public have asked for Carmen Bridge. Some have spoken against Carmen Bridge. One has asked for money for an elderly survey, and one has, or at least some members of the public have asked with regard to vacancy tax, and related items. And so we haven't made a definitive decision, and to say that you didn't receive support when it seems explicit that we can't add things, no one has said that. No one has said that at this point. So I mean, I just asked for a cohesive, and engaged, process. I don't know what we're supposed to do at this point if we've afforded you an opportunity to add something and you didn't avail yourself of it. And now, you're basically explicitly saying no one supported, and then you're backtracking saying, oh, well, that's not what I meant. I meant that I can't add it when we haven't even voted on whether, that part of the process can go forward. Now, with regard to your comment that, this is something that, we should have met about and agreed to a process at the very beginning. Well, I will note that we have a full quarter left in our fiscal year. This is something that we've, run into a couple of different challenges in the last couple of fiscal years because of the nature of, what we've been experiencing collectively. And this is actually a fairly new, process to have a work plan at all. And I will point out that if you look at the work plan items from our previous year, a lot of them did get accomplished. And we're just trying to, process the refinements of that process. And, while I think your point, with regard to defining something is well taken, I do ask for, some patience with regard to the idea that, we are trying to formulate this as fairly and cohesively as we can, but it's not something that has been automatically set in stone. And we, are trying to figure out what would work, going forward, because this is a fairly, new process. So, I do ask that you engage, and if people do have support for a particular, priority, that you not express, chagrin or disappointment that it's simply not there, because I think that there are opportunities here to, support, particular priorities. So Jim, you have your hand raised and you had asked to make a comment.
Just one quick one. So we're discussing potential CIP projects to be bringing forth to the council, and one of them that we're looking at bringing forth does have an item to discuss the 3 different properties, with a budget item to that. So that might help too. But that'll be coming during the budget piece.
Right. And to that point, when we talk about, I mean, there are a couple of differentiators here, right? And ultimately, these are really fair points to be hashing out. When we have this delineation between, what some people like to describe as, policy versus operations, right? I mean, that's not a codified, delineation. I mean, that's something that, kind of people in, professional service organizations try to, kind of, describe as a way of, helping to packetize, the work and the roles, but the fact of the matter is, if you're really looking at, trying to get these things done, I mean, it does help us to, try to, create some categories, but at the same time, if it's useful to call it a CIP project and we're in good faith trying to work with each other, I don't think that we should, kind of create lockstep, lock and key definitive, square peg, round hole, kind of constructs to try to block each other from, accomplishing things. So, I do appreciate that, Jim. And I don't think that we're at loggerheads with regard to, trying to get some conversation at least going on these city-owned properties that are, just kind of sitting there, frankly. Councilmember Moore, before I go back to Vice Mayor Chow, because I know Vice Mayor Chow has, 6 minutes to kind of present her, other proposals here. Did you want to follow up? You have your hand raised.
At the start of this item, I wanted to understand the process, and that would have been the ideal time to have had a discussion about it. And also, when I first brought up the properties, I would have really liked to have heard at that time that it was going to come back as a CIP item. That would have saved me some irritation. So I did ask about process at the start of the evening, and now we're talking about it well into it. So I think it is the right thing to do. The timing of it is not ideal. And with regards to it coming back on as a CIP item, how does that then work into the rankings that we're doing tonight? I don't understand that part. If someone can clarify that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, so Jim, and I think for the benefit of clarity here, we have a few properties, and they essentially adjoin the Blackberry Farm corridor. There's there's a couple along Stevens Creek, actually. The Stockemeyer property next to the orchard. There's the Blesh House, I believe it's called, next to the Blue Pheasant and Pro Shop of Blackberry Farm Golf Course. There's the Burn property at the San Fernando Road opening entrance to Blackberry Farm. And so, those are properties that each of the council members have visited at this point. And there are open questions as to, what to do with those properties because they're not being utilized at this point. And so Councilmember Moore's concern is, with these properties, are we moving these forward? And, with limited bandwidth in CIP projects, I think that the general sense I'm hearing from our city manager is that there will be some movement forward. There will be attention paid, or at least there is that intention to bring that forward to the public as a group of properties, and the beginning of a capital improvement project process. So Jim, if I'm capturing that accurately, let us know. But outside of that, I'm quite happy to add that as a work program item because it may well be something that the public is not aware of, largely. And so Jim, I see your hand has lowered at this point. And I'm assuming that there's not much more to say on that particular item, but
Mayor, what you said was correct. It's going to come forward. It would be like an overview kind of a project. It's not going to be suggested to rebuild the homes or tear down, put something else. It'll be discussions on what their current condition is, what would need to be done or not done. That type of a discussion is what that CIP would be proposing.
Right. Understood. So just so we're all aware, if we put it on the work program, don't expect any of these properties to be going down or significant capital expenditures or projects to be effectuated in this upcoming fiscal year. So it sounds like it would be part of a process. And I will say that I think the work program process also motivates a lot of discussion and movement for various items. I view the Lawrence Mitty project as very similar to this. I mean, I added a fairly extensive description in an item, and in the interim, we've got a fairly extensive update on what's happening there. So I mean, it's just something that I think we should view more as a tool. And I just look, I'll just leave it at that. Let's go to okay. So Councilmember Way, your comments tend to be pretty succinct, and so let me call on you before we go to Vice Mayor Chow, which I know she has a few suggestions for what was going to be originally her motion.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I just want to bring us back to the importance of what do we value. I love all these discussions, all the projects and all the things that our city could have done, but we have to bring back to realistically, rationally, what can we do next year and what are our priorities so the staff can work on it. We all know we have surplus properties and we all toured it. And it's a huge project if we want to even decide to work on one. So I do think it is not a time to do it now on the work plan, but that's just my point. But everybody can decide to say, yes, we can add it on. But I just want to say that I think Mayor Paul made it very clear from March 16th, we could add up to 5 items. There were 14. I have to say I added none because I think I look at my 50 something items, that's enough already. So we did get a chance to add anything we want. So I just want to bring us back to the process, like let's make our decisions and so the staff have some guidelines to go with and make our top priorities and move forward from there. It doesn't mean we're not going to work on other things.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councilor Roy. All right, Vice Mayor, you can
Okay.
present your 4 items that you were going to modify a bit here.
Okay. First, I think the process question, I am still confused. So can we add new item today or not? My understanding is we are not adopting the final work program today. We are just prioritizing them. Therefore, my understanding then is we can add them, we can revise them. This is our chance to do so. We didn't get a chance last time. We were told not to say anything, just rank. So we did that. This is our first ever chance to propose an item that, and also, so anyway, so if we are not allowed to do that, then that's very confusing to me. If we are not allowed to edit anything, that's very confusing to me. But I'll just say my piece and then you can decide what to do. I understand these are all new items that's proposed by a lot of people, a few people today, but these are things that has been talked about by the city for a while. It's just, I think they should have brought it up a month earlier. So I kind of combine them as a home ownership enhancement initiative. And I understand there are a lot of things. So maybe we could have a study session first on the home ownership enhancement initiative. And hopefully that will lead to something. I think we should do a housing stock survey so that we understand what housing stocks are there, how many are actually how many ownership homes are rented or owned by corporation. And I can send this earlier. I'll just go through them fast. And the community land trust, there are various options. I think that's something to explore because it's a way to have home ownership homes for a longer time, even forever. And home ownership assistance program. There are various shared equity home down payment assistance program, such as there are 2 programs by Housing Trust in Silicon Valley, and then there is Landbid. So people can get some down payment assistance and the organization gets part of the equity. My understanding is the city can contribute a certain dollars to start the program. And then also incentives for development projects to create more ownership homes so that we don't end up with a majority renter in the Cupertino. So this is what I'm hoping we can explore on home ownership enhancement initiative. I'm not sure if it should be study session, start with a study session, but I hope we end up with something that's more concrete. And as for the other items that, okay, so for the ANZA housing program, I hope that we add back the house share program. It was in our work program. They had the program, but they paused it in 2020. And I hope that they can restart that and also explore BMR housing. I think I said that. Anyway, I said that piece. And I think the integrated community engagement plan, which I proposed, should be merged with number 27, resident engagement. This is a big project, but it will save us a whole lot of time because we won't be reinventing the wheel with every project. For example, this time I see that Lawrence Mitty has a really good plan, but housing management, after 4 months, we don't have a plan. There is disparity there, but if we have an integrated plan for the city, any new project can have a blueprint to use, then that will save everyone a lot of time. On the gun safety storage ordinance, it's not a mere of other cities have done it, let's copy it. It has a lot of issues. So if I don't think we should do this. However, if this is kept on the agenda, I think we need to look into what's the current gun purchase and storage requirement. What's the criminal charges now when a gun owner let others have access to their guns, and then how we can enforce whatever ordinance that we do adopt when the gun is at someone's home. And I actually like this student internship program, even though I did not propose that. But whoever proposed that is really well written. I added something to clarify some questions that the staff had in their question mark. I think I added some incentive that this kind of internship program actually builds the pipeline for students to be interested in civic government work. And that is what we really need for working in public agency. I think this should be open for college and high school students, and the internship program could be summer program, but it could be year round also, because a lot of students actually has a lot of, especially high school students, they have a summer camps. They are busy in the summer, year round might be possible. And I think college interns should be paid, and sometimes they have this like 3 months, it's a stipend, so it's not by an hour. Maybe high school also, and there are actually funding sources for this program. For example, Civic Leadership USA, they provide internship funding for matching. And the youth who work program is what I proposed, and thanks the staff for recommending to include that. I'd like to add some explanation. This program actually helps relieve the labor shortage for hourly wage workers in our area for Cupertino businesses. Not only small businesses, even big business like Whole Foods have a trouble finding workers. And I think in terms of implementation, economic development manager could likely work with a community partner to administer this program, such as Chamber of Commerce. I think that's all. Yeah.
Okay. I have a hand raised from Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. I'm wondering if, like, the Community Land Trust and the other ideas could be called home ownership strategies, perhaps, and then have like maybe subheadings underneath if we were going to get into it. But also, if we were willing, you could take the homeowner strategies and see about pulling in some of the resident ideas with regards to the perhaps the vacancy tax, and come up with some language for that particular topic, which to me is more of like a study session to see what ideas could turn into ordinances for the city in the future. With regards to housing stock, my one concern on that is that well, not really a concern. I think it should be part of the housing element, part of the assessment that we've been asking for, which hopefully has been underway. But I know that I've heard the request for what do we have already many times now, and it supposedly is underway for that process. I'm hoping that is the case. If somebody could from staff let us know. But I like the ideas that are here. Also, Mayor Paul, I kind of thought that your idea that you had further down in the list with regards to homelessness and jobs, that there was perhaps some way to include that in the ELI and the BMR housing. It is for developmentally disabled individuals, but it also says the ELI, so you could potentially add in something for homelessness. And I'm not seeing the Simeon property being mentioned, but there may be some way that that could be explored. And if we do get the other properties on the list burn, potentially, sure, you could develop on that site, but it could also be suggested to sell it and buy a larger property somewhere with less of the tricky slope issues and location issues. So there should be an array of options coming to us rather than pointing us to one solution. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Let me try to work backwards here. So,
Can I respond
can you respond?
regarding? I did include in my write-up. I
Yeah,
did include
let me, okay, just stop your screen share. Let me, since you've had your turn, yeah, keep your hand up. I'll respond to you in a moment, Vice Mayor. So with regard to the student internship program, that was mine. And so I don't have objections to refinements, but I think that, those refinements are probably something that, ultimately are going to get pushed down the road. And that's probably true for a lot of what we're, talking about in terms of the scope of our subject matter. And so as I was writing that, what I realized is that, the beginning of a fiscal year is July 1st. And so if we put this in, for the next fiscal year, even if it looks like we're going to pass it and it gets on our work program, by the time it starts, we're talking about already being in the middle of a student summer break. So, pragmatically speaking, that's too late to initiate certainly a full-fledged internship program. So, my thought on that was that we could individually take on, student interns this year, like in most years, certain members of council do end up, responding to what are inevitable, inquiries from our students. And, I think if we put it on the work program, what we're really doing is we're committing to calendar year 2023, potentially having a more full-fledged program. So, as those details get hashed out, Vice Mayor, I do see that, details such as adding, college students to it, those are reasonable ones to, kind of want to add in at the very beginning. So, this is something where I think that it's very legitimate to put that detail in, but and I understand, we should have a common understanding of what we're voting for, but I am hearing a couple of things in terms of kind of new topical items such as home ownership that I think, we should have more of that kind of threshold question of whether we're willing to entertain new items here. And so I think if we can answer that threshold question, then, if it's a yes, then we can just go through these items. I think they're a manageable amount. I'm hearing a few from the public and a couple here, maybe another one, if you include the city properties. So let me just kind of ask each of us here. We have a set list, okay? It was a desk item in terms of the kind of the full-fledged, version of it. Do we want to go with that set list in terms of how we, proceed to either vote or cull, or do we want to, potentially add a few this evening? And so, let's just take a sense of it here in a straw poll. If I end up being the tiebreaker, for the sake of, just trying to go forward as a group, I will say yes, as long as it's relegated to these 5 or 6 things. But Vice Mayor Chow, would you be in support of? And I'm not calling you to make comments on what you wanted to, kind of elaborate on. I just want to get a sense, in an effort to, possibly curtail this or define the parameters of it. Are you okay with adding items here?
Yeah, I think we need to. The
Okay.
public didn't have a chance to add items until today.
Okay. Councilmember Willie, would you want to add items? Yes. Okay, that's a yes. Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Way, would you be okay with adding the items?
Yeah, I have an issue with it because the public doesn't know, but okay, if everybody wants to add items, we can really consider.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Councilmember Way, but I will note that the public that did come out tonight did, like I said earlier, suggest a few items that aren't on here, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm really just counting, 6 items, 3 items from our council and 3 items from the public. And so, perhaps what we can do is we can go over those items, determine whether we want to put those on the list, and then go through the other items. I would say let's take a look at the very low ranked ones, the ones that got, say, 3 points or less, and then also the ones that are not includes on staff recommendations. And then hopefully we can come up with something that would be a more, consolidated list that we'll then proceed to, prioritize at a different session. So, and so before we do that, Vice Mayor Chow, you seem to want to kind of further some.
Very short. My write-up for the home ownership initiative does include that after the stock survey, we should consider vacancy tax, foreign ownership tax, or corporate ownership tax for ownership homes, that as the next step. But I think we need to know what we have first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's let's put that in as an item to consider. Councilmember Way, you have your hand raised. Do you want to make a comment?
Yes, I do, because, I get it, we get public says support, but other public doesn't know that they can propose. And when we talk about tax, we're going to get a lot of other opinions. I just have an issue of adding something that's so controversial, but I guess we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think if we add it now, we're not going to definitively vote on it as to whether it's part of the work plan. I think we need to get it written down, first of all, so that we can evaluate and get it noticed. Councilmember Moore?
Hey, thank you, Mayor Paul. I was wondering if we word it a certain way that the staff could come back with various strategies that we then discuss and prioritize at a later date. For instance, if we were to call it something like, and someone else can correct me or add or change, if you called it something like housing ownership strategies, perhaps, then maybe that more of a vague title could allow staff to come back and then say, you could consider a vacancy tax. These cities did it. This is how it went. You could consider foreign ownership tax. These are the cities that have done it. I actually don't know of any in the United States, just Vancouver, but there's more. Who tried restricting corporate ownership to apartments? Did it work? How did that go? Was it popular? Any of these suggestions? So basically, everything that Vice Mayor has suggested could come back as an array of options, including Measure A, the loan assistance. And maybe that's a way that we can just provide the options. We talk about them and see later what the residents think about it.
Jim?
Yeah, this, whatever council is going to end up doing will do, but that would be a considerable amount of work, and especially to do work that if the council decides, oh, we don't want to do that one, we would have expended substantial staff time to go through. Typically, when I've been in other places, it gets whittled down to maybe the last pass, and then we can start putting more time and effort into certain ones. But to do that in the beginning, that is a lot of staff time to look at things that may or may not move forward. And we're not in that position at the moment.
I'm not quite understanding. So are you indicating that you wouldn't want to add it to a potential consideration for a work plan item, or
No, I'm sorry, Mayor, if we added an item, that's fine, but to start checking and seeing and doing the research on different items, and it's not one that is being absolutely 100% approved by the council, that's a lot of staff time that's being used, and it's possibly for an item that will not be voted on and ranked high enough for us to do anything. That makes
Okay,
sense.
no, I mean, I think we're not quite at that point yet, right now, where we're, giving a thumbs up or thumbs down to add that as a description. So I think Councilmember Moore is really going through a kind of like a deliberative process, which we're not, all five of us committed to in terms of adding, those specifics. So, let me, okay, so again, we have a few items that we're talking about here that they're limited. Some are, housing, ownership strategy, vacancy tax, whatever you want to describe it. It seems like there's an attempt to create a bit of an omnibus, item. And so let me start with this. Okay, let's go through council and figure out if there's an appetite to, even consider this as an added item. So I'm going to go through in the order of same that I checked last time. Vice Mayor Chow, Councilmember Willie, and then Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Way, and then myself. So Vice Mayor Chow, would you want to add this item on under a work plan consideration for, something that would be written out and able to be noticed properly?
I want to first clarify. I put in all these different texts there doesn't mean I support it. Of course not. If you want me to vote on vacancy tax today, I probably won't, because I don't know how much vacancy is there. Why should we do tax something, and what's the consequence?
That's not my question is whether you support putting
Don't
it on.
mistaken, having something here means we support any of this or community trust. It just means it's an option we should explore. So and I agree, staff shouldn't spend time investigating now.
Okay.
And
Well,
this is just saying, let's explore those, a study session.
It's a very
Yeah, I would like to add this as a study session.
Okay.
So we find strategies to improve home ownership.
Okay. Councilmember Willie, would you be in support of adding this as a potential work plan item to be voted upon?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
I add a caveat. I mean, I out of the four that were suggested, vacancy tax, foreign ownership tax, I would take like one and explore vacancy tax only because I've seen it in Berkeley. Is it Berkeley? Oakland, I believe, Measure Z, they have it. And then they're looking at it up in San Francisco. So I would like to just take a look, see how it's going there. And personally, I would not touch items 2, 3, and 4 that were suggested in that, because just out of conservatism for what we would look at. I'm a little concerned about going so far afield. So overall, the answer is yes, I would like to explore it, but I would really narrow the focus somehow.
Okay. Yes, with qualifiers noted. Councilmember Way?
No, because I would like to rate our own programs already on the table first. Tax measures are very, very controversial.
No.
It's just, and explore it, it's going to take staff time. I really want the staff input. How much time do they have the time to do it? Whether we have other memorial park, other things that's more important. Again, we're adding things that I think we, even without staff input, that how much time that they're going to take them, and we might explore the vacancy tax and decided, oh, it's not going to work, and then already staff time is. Anyway, my answer is no.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Councilmember.
That's not what I propose, actually. Can I clarify?
Order. Let me
clarify.
Yeah. No, don't interrupt. Thanks.
I didn't propose doing text.
Okay. I'm sorry. I had to mute you. I mean, honestly, I have to run the meeting. So it's going to me. I will go ahead and support this. I will have this caveat. We need to ask staff to come up with a written description. Okay. And so, none of us has that description here. And so what I would suggest is that we go back to staff and ask them to come up with that description. We're going to have to go ahead and, consolidate the results of our work. okay, this is the addition portion, and we're going to have to go back and, hopefully cull out, some of these items. And so, that'll be the first item. And I'm going to propose an omnibus motion based upon what we're doing here. This is not a motion, okay? This is not a formal, vote, but it is a show of support. My second question is this, with regard to the city-owned properties, would there be a support for adding a work plan item explicitly to state that we are going to be, visiting this in terms of staff providing us an update or study session on a public study session on the state of these, properties and, some proposed plan going forward. Vice Mayor Chow.
I have to clarify. Here is my proposal. Item 1, Housing Stock Survey. Item 2, Community Land Trust. Item 3, Home Ownership Assistance Program. Item 4, Incentive for more ownership housing. Text is only maybe a next step after we know where we are. I did not propose next year we will even study vacancy text. So there seems to be a misunderstanding. I'm just saying that could be still considered, but that's not the main thing in what I'm proposing here. But people are objecting because something that's really secondary. So I really want to clarify that. And for the list of city properties as a work program item, yeah, I think that should be there. We really need to discuss how to deal with them. We can let them sit there.
Thank you. Councilmember Woolley?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Way?
I have no objection having it. I just don't know if we can squeeze into the 22-23 program.
Well, I think it was going to come anyway. I mean, I don't think it hurts to.
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
Yeah, memorialize that. So that should be the relatively easy one. I'm a yes on that one as well. And so at this point, I will go ahead and just remind everyone that we do have another round coming back at us clearly because we're adding a couple of items. I do want to ask our group, do you want to consider the I identified them as 3: a senior strategy survey funding, Carmen Bridge, and then also it was the one that we just dealt with actually. So it would just be 2 more here. It would be the senior strategy survey funding and Carmen Bridge. Do we want to deal with those as potential additional items? I can ask in the same manner. Does anyone want to discuss this before I ask for a straw poll opinion? We'll take them in order. So Richard Adler had suggested that we commission a senior survey and that age-friendly Cupertino, the organization, essentially be put in charge of running the survey. Thoughts on that? I mean, is that something that we want to entertain as an additional item to be considered? Vice Mayor Chow?
So what I proposed earlier is to merge that as our current senior strategy item, because the current item did a very superficial survey, and this is exactly under that.
Okay, Councilmember Moore?
Okay, yeah, if the Vice Mayor is referring to item 44,
Is it?
or is there another one? But it seems like we've already been addressing this.
That's number 15.
15, and then, okay, so there's also a senior outreach project as well. So I think personally, we've got it covered. And then the other part is kind of getting into a policy issue about who's in control of running these projects. And so personally, I want to keep it in the city staff hands as much as possible. And I have an example from another project, which we'll get to later in the evening. I'm not actually in support of adding either of these items to the list right now. Thank you.
Can I clarify what this survey is?
Sure, Vice Mayor.
So this is a specific survey that they already identified a company that's very experienced in running this kind of survey in other cities. And Richard Adler has helped in a previous city he lived before. So it's not something we are coming up from scratch. And it will ask detailed on the different kind of service needs that seniors need. So it's something they already have, but we'll customize it to Cupertino's need, and they'll help us customize that. So that is not something the city staff would be able to come up from scratch, and they already identified. I think he even has a price quote of how much it will cost in the email.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. And that, again, that gets into the procurement issue and contracting, which is something that we've identified in the internal audit. So I, again, have a problem with this suggestion. Thank you.
Jim, you have your hand raised.
I was just going to say the same thing. From a procurement side, we'd still have to follow the proper policies and, depending on the cost of it, go out for an RFP or something like that.
Okay,
thank you, Jim.
that makes sense.
Well, let me hear from the other members of council. So is there an appetite to, and let's just deal with the senior survey first. Councilmember Willie?
So as I originally said, I'd like to keep our work plan to around 30 items. So I would not advocate for having this be its own line item. I would think that it's possible to add this to line item 15, and the night that we decide on the final work plan, we could decide to either pencil it in or strike it out. Put it in, and we might strike it out depending on what staff says it's going to cost and the added hours over and above what they're planning for item 15. But,
okay, thanks, Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Way?
My opinion is same as Councilmember Member Willie. This is a very dedicated group, and then working with our staff, we can use this survey or that survey, but I think included in the senior strategy will be a good thing.
Okay, well, great. I don't mean to be unoriginal, but when I heard Councilmember Willie's suggestion, it sounded like a good idea to me. I mean, and my idea was really to kind of send this as a referral to staff as to, what their recommendations would be after hearing this and after evaluating it. I think that could easily be folded in item number 15. What I like about item number 15 is it also mentions both the city council and commissions, and that's really what we have purview over. I think that it really does make sense. And so what I would say is that if number 15 could be modified to include this idea and some staff vetting of it, we could kind of fold this into a strategy over which we have, some direct contact and, ability to engage, because there really are a lot of, kind of outreach mechanisms that are quite untapped, within our council and our commissions. And, by that point, I will just point out when it came to some of these projects recently, particularly our litter pickup, I mean, as a council, we were able to get 15 volunteers, including ourselves out there. I mean, VTA did contact our city staff, and then there was a couple rounds of outreach. I think they got like 3 people, from the community. And so, I think to that point as well, when people are trying to outreach, it's really a good idea to lean on council and our, appointeds, because we're from the city. And to be sitting here, we had to get, thousands upon thousands of votes of support. So that's just something to think about in terms of, this kind of conducting of outreach. Vice Mayor Chow and then Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I want to clarify. Of course, I didn't mean that city has to use that consultant they proposed. What I mean is they have done the work. There's this type of survey that's done by people. Of course, we can do an IFP. There might be multiple different kinds we can choose from, that's better. What I mean is just there is certain way people already have experience doing. And another thing is under this item, I wish to add, if at the council's pleasure, the service needs of those who wish to age at home. I think this is kind of an urgent need. Seniors are aging. Many of them need this 2 years ago, and there's this middle population. They don't use senior center or can afford. They cannot afford the pricey rental homes. They don't qualify for West Valley Community Services, but they age at home because that's the most affordable way. But what services do they need? What services are there? Palo Alto has this kind of service for age at home population. We don't. Some other cities have. I think this is what senior strategy should be. We have this item this whole year. It didn't do anything but did a superficial survey. Therefore, I find out we need to be specific on what we want this item to do. This is what I'm trying to clarify. So good, we have a more in-depth survey, but can we also specifically look at service needs of seniors aging at home and what other cities offer for this kind of population?
Okay. Yeah, so let's go to Councilmember Moore. You have your hand raised. Did you want to make a comment on this?
So it did say that this is a current city work plan item, and I have the previous work program printed out. So I'm kind of wondering what the 34,000 was going to be going for, because I'm actually thinking that survey could have been included in this particular cost. The other part is that elaborating on what the vice mayor said is that we might want to include elder abuse, which is often financial elder abuse in this area because the housing has gotten so expensive, and you have seniors who own their home, and things can happen. And then aging strategies for seniors who want to stay in their homes, if there's something that staff can provide information on. So going back to the original question, what's the $34,000? What was that? What were people expecting for a work product from that?
I'm not really quite sure which $34,000 you're referring to. Are you talking about the member of the public who suggested a budget of 34,000?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. In the work program that we have now and in the previous one, it has a estimated budget of $34,000.
I see.
I was wondering what that was for.
Our city manager has his hand raised. Jim, did you want to speak to that?
A lot of that was due to outreach and some staffing issues, trying to have enough people. I don't know, is Carrie on tonight? There she is, or Joanne.
Hi, Joanne.
Good evening. Yes, that was in order to do outreach for the actual survey and then to address what the product would be as far as outreach goes once we got information from the survey. So a lot of it was in response to what resources seniors were not aware of and how we would address getting them that information. So whether that be a mailer of some sort or some type of marketing campaign based on the information that we got back.
Have you spent that money, Director McGreeny?
No, we have not spent it all. I'd have to research how much we've spent to date.
Okay, I mean, would you say you spent most of it or half of it, or has it been?
Less than half.
Okay. So I do see that Jim and Councilmember Moore, that you both have your hands still raised. So Jim's hands down. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I just want to point out that in our table, we have estimated budget, not including staff, of the 34,000. So just to point out that the staff time is not included in that amount. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, good point. And these are all really good cohesive connecting points to our current work plan. So what I'm hearing so far is that there is some appetite to move forward in some capacity, and there's a reminder of what's on our current work plan as well. My final question, and this is based upon our consolidated comments and comments of the public, there were a significant number of people that talked about Carmen Bridge. frankly, I don't have enough of an ear to the ground to know precisely what the genesis of this was, because I see it wasn't on our, prior iterations of voting here. But there were a number of people that spoke on it, not just, for it, but also with reservations. And so let me go through the same order. But I'll take some comments first. Councilmember Way, did you want to speak to this item?
Yes, I would like to have some clarification because I do remember Common Bridge was or is on our either CIP or because we did have some money in there to acquire land and to investigate. So I remember it was in last year's something. And sorry, I didn't quite, is it CIP or is it on a work plan? And this is not something out of the blue. This has been studied, Park and Recreation Commission has recommended. So I don't think that residents are coming to lobby any specific things. This was on our plan even before I was elected on council, I believe. So I do believe if it's not on the work plan, it needs to be on the CIP plan. And I did ask Manager Jim about, the resident said this ownership thing is resolved, whether it's confirmed by the staff or not, I haven't heard about that. So I just want some clarifications.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way. I think that's probably a question that someone from our Public Works Department might be able to answer best. Or Jim, you have your hand up. Did you want to speak to the Carmen Bridge status?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I did have a short update on it, and I was under the impression from what I believe I was told that it is city-owned property, but if Chad is still available, he can. And
yes, is Cameron. Welcome.
Yeah, so the staff did investigate the land ownership there on the north side of Carmen Road Bridge per the city work program. And in that investigation, we found that the city actually does own that land. The county APN maps were confusing, misleading, indicating that it was privately owned. So now that we have those now that we have that established, we're looking to potentially bring for council consideration at some point in the future the actual bridge project.
Okay. And Jim, your hand is still raised. Did you want to?
I do apologize.
Okay. Vice Mayor Chow.
So first, should we vote on the senior strategy to approve the modification or the addition under that first? Do a straw vote?
There were actually 3 people that.
So we don't need to vote.
Yeah, no, we already weighed in on that.
Including the seniors aging at home.
Let's focus on Carmen Bridge right now, since that's our topic of discussion.
But shouldn't we finish that item first before we move on?
I'd rather we.
Okay. So
we're in the middle of
Carmen Bridge. I understand we have a long list of capital projects like earthquake safety for the city and other city-owned buildings. And Carmen Bridge, it's really nice to have project. I would have loved to have a bridge there you can walk over. And there are many bike projects too, especially on areas that's high accident prone. And do we have funding for those? I think we should have an overview what projects we have and prioritize them, and then decide, do we have spare cash for Carmen Bridge? Compare with Stevens Creek separated bikeway, for example, intersection improvement at Dianza and the Stelling, for example. So I don't know, I don't have that visibility. But if today I don't need to worry about that, just Carmen Bridge, yeah, I'll support that. It would be really nice to be able to have that. But so when the CIP comes back, I hope that we have that long-term view of how much we do have to spend on, so we can decide if we have money for this item. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. This is really testing my memory. So, gosh, maybe I was on Planning Commission when Carmen Road Bridge came, and I remember looking at what was probably a parcel map there. But it seemed to me one of the issues was with regards to there wasn't a sidewalk to my recollection, that it is a kind of it perhaps has a rural designation as well. And there was some concern about the suggestion for it to have bike access. And that was kind of a interesting and somewhat problematic issue because you don't have sidewalks, and it was kind of where the bicycle's going to go. Is this really a safe area? What kind of changes would it encourage? And then there was something about if they were going to have sidewalks and curbs put in there, there was something about needing a certain percentage or number of residents who were in support of it. And there were some, I don't want to say controversial, but there were some more complicated issues with that project that make me very uncomfortable putting it onto the work plan. Having seen it before, and there's issues with this. So I wish that this were suggested earlier, but at this 11th hour, recalling these items, I'm very reluctant to put it on the list. It needed to come to us much sooner, and then have staff remind us what's going on at that location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way.
Oh, thank you. I was just gonna see if I can get an answer whether this was on the CIP plan or not, because everything Councilmember Moore talked about, I remember we had discussed that when it was on the CIP plan last year, or a work plan. And I do think we're just talking about whether we want to put it on a work plan or not. Since, if we say this is the wee hours, we're adding some, other things that's really big too. So I want to give it a fair chance because this is really a plan that's not new. It's been there for a long, long time. And it's been the top priority for the Park and Recreation Commission for a while too. So, and we did work on it last year. So I want to say this is not a sudden plan that's coming up. It just probably it's not in a work plan because it on the CIP plan. So can I get my answers answered? Was it just on the CIP plan last year? Because it was on some plan last year.
Well, and just to clarify, I think you mean the Bike Ped Commission when you say Parks and
Yes, I'm sorry, Bike Ped Commission. Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul.
And the other part about, I'm not sure that it made it onto I'm pretty sure it did not, in fact, make it onto our work plan priorities, for the current fiscal year, which goes to another question as to, the relationship between CIP projects and work plan projects, right? I mean, if it is a CIP project, I guess it leads to the question of how was the CIP project determined, especially vis-a-vis, possibly the fact that it's not on the work plan as a stated priority of council. So, Chad, Assistant Director Mosley, you have your camera on. Did you want to speak to?
Briefly, the Carmen Road Bridge item that was on the city work plan from last year was an investigation as to trying to acquire the necessary ownership to place the bridge there. That was the only plan that was on the city work plan. There is nothing on the CIP. At this point in time, we've just found that we already own that land. We have a CIP plan kind of bringing it for next year, and staff would recommend potentially considering the Carmen Road Bridge for the next fiscal year after that, fiscal year 23-24. That would allow us to get caught up on many of the current projects that are already currently funded or underway, as well as kind of tackle some of the newer priorities that are coming up. One of them being we're going to be looking at feasibility studies for what it would take to renovate these residential properties that was discussed earlier tonight.
That's great. Honestly, I think with that question, that answer, we probably, ticked off one work plan item from this current fiscal year, right? I mean, staff's made the investigation and found out that the city actually owns this. So, I mean, I don't know why we would necessarily need to agendize that and, provide that. But I mean, maybe we can consent calendar it out since it's, a pretty clear update. For me, the timetable sounds great. I mean, putting it on a CIP next year as a recommendation to move forward the following, fiscal year. It does make sense, especially given the scope of what we have in front of us here. But let's go to Councilmember Willie. You haven't weighed in on this item yet.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and weigh in. I see that this one really belongs on the CIP list. The cost for a bridge, has got to be in the many multiple $1 million range. And the work plan is really focused primarily on city staff and then whatever funds they need for getting that work done. Now, on the CIP items, I think it needs to then be collated with the other project. As staff finishes existing CIP, bike CIP, then they can pull in based on the bike ped and the community's priorities. The McClellan Road separated bike lanes, the Stevens Creek separated bike lanes, the bike lanes on Bub Road, the Ragnar Creek. And so in fairness to the whole community for dispersal of the money that we have, and let the priorities be set and equally allotted. And if the community says the next highest priority item when anything finishes is Carmen, then I would say, boom, that's where it would belong. And tonight, I think we should focus on the work plan. And I can say, we have 2 bike items on our current work plan. I'm trying to keep it to 30, and we have Vision Zero, and we also have bike facilities. And so that's line item 4 and line item 23. So 2 out of 30. So I think it belongs on the CIP, and probably will get a lot of support from the community. And so it'll get prioritized accordingly. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. I think we're in alignment there, and I'll take it with Councilmember Moore's comments that we wouldn't have the majority of sticking it on the current list to vote on for the work plan in this upcoming fiscal year, under advisement from our staff that the plan is to put on the CIP for the upcoming fiscal year. Nevertheless, Councilmember Way, you have your hand raised. I
just want to ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, because it did mention that we could get some grant from, because this is a project that has potential to get grant. So I wonder if the staff, think the timing is right when to get a grant. Maybe I'll leave to the staff's discretion, but I want to say that if we can get some grant of this project, then we can save some money.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way. Councilmember Moore?
Sorry to be a little bit off here. So I'm looking at the city work program goal survey from Engage Cupertino. 255 visitors, 185 responses, 182 are anonymous, 3 are registered. And then when I look at it, I would actually like staff from IT department to pull up the IP addresses that these survey responses are coming from. These anonymous responses are kind of interesting. Anonymous, they want housing at 3:06 p.m., same day, 3:40, housing and quality of life, anonymous. I'm just thinking that this anonymous person is is somewhat similar, making very similar responses. DOLA areas in multiple Cupertino parks, the next one. And that was 348, 403, DOLA off-leash park with more available times. 414, establish new DOLAs. 418, open more parks and public spaces for dogs. I'm seeing a trend here, so I actually would like staff to see if this survey has been put out there in a way that can block people from repeat IP responses. We saw this happen with the Opticos survey, where you could spoof the system very, very easily and flood it with responses. So I'm concerned that this survey has some problems. So I appreciate that that it was done, but this one had at first glance it looked like the Carmen Bridge ended up pretty high on it as well. So I would like a little bit of research on this. When we're doing these surveys, are we getting really good and accurate information and data back? Thank you.
Okay. So here's what I would suggest. You know, we're coming up on 11:20. I would like us to get through another item at least. We're on item 12. Item 13 shouldn't take too long. I'm not anticipating either item 14 or 15 can get done. Those are respectively the Economic Development Committee, as well as something else that will take, I think, a more extensive amount of time. So here, what I would suggest is that it looks like we do have support to add to this list a couple of items, one having to do with housing ownership strategies in a study session with a possible inclusion ultimately of, you know, the vacancy tax discussion, and a modification to item 15 to include a staff recommendation for a survey of our senior population. You know, I'm trying to determine whether we could relatively quickly identify items that we would want to take off this list. You know, we do have a number of items that only got 1 point. And I would say all of those items, except for the long-term strategic plan, those are 4 items, I should say, were not recommended for inclusion by the staff. So, or maybe it's 5. Yeah, it's 5. And then of those, you know, one of them was not recommended for inclusion. So can we agree to not include those in our upcoming vote? I see Vice Mayor Chow with a hand up. No hand up. Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't. Sorry, could you repeat what you're not including?
So my suggestion in this list of 56 items that we have right now, that, you know, when we get an updated, you know, round, that we exclude the 1 point items that were at the very least not recommended for inclusion by our city staff. And so are we okay with doing that? And I see Councilman Moore, you have your hand raised.
Mayor Paul, could you point to, or just tell me what number that the 1 starts at? Because in order to be able to read the item, I had to print it cropped off on the right side.
You know, I'll read the item titles. 52 is the festival that is run by Fine Arts Commission. 53.
Okay, so start at 52. Okay,
Right.
and the seismic part did get included. That's up in the 40s. Okay, I was just a little concerned that the seismic retrofit, that's at 43. We're cool. So 42 and down. 52 and down.
Excluding 53, because that actually has an include recommendation by staff.
Okay, so take off 52, you're saying, and then 54 through to, that's it, 54 to 56. Okay, so we're getting rid of 4 items, that's it?
Well, at this point, what I'm suggesting.
You mean only the total is 1, not the average is 1?
No, that's total. That's a total. Yeah, only one person voted to assign at 1 point.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Did we get rid of privately owned EV chargers?
Those are our 2 points. So that would be the next question.
Okay, could we go through the 2-point ones and could you please give us the range?
Well, can I get, can I get a sense of whether there's an appetite to eliminate the 1-point ones that are recommended not for inclusion?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I see a nod from Councilmember Way and Councilmember Willie, are you okay with that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, yeah, I'm okay with it. Vice Mayor Chow, I'm assuming that you're all right with it, that we have a majority here. There are 2 items under not include that are 2 points. Those are privately owned EV chargers, as Councilmember Moore just pointed out, and volunteer engagement strategy, which is a Public Safety Commission proposal. So are we okay with excluding those? Those are numbers 50 and 51.
So is that not include the operational or just not include the volunteer strategy?
They're both not include operational.
Okay. So then I would like this item for the public commission to continue to be able to discuss, because we know that block leader program, it has been operational, but then really not operational.
Right.
So if a commission can request update, that would be good.
Okay. Well, thanks for that,
Yeah.
that input, Vice Mayor. I'm trying to be faithful to our procedure that we defined. I don't think that the council priorities under the work program are create an exclusive set of things that a particular commission can add to their items for consideration. I think technically the chair of each commission goes ahead and sets that in collaboration with the staff liaison. And so I think this would be just one factor for consideration. If we drop this, I think the Public Safety Commission, could still take it on, as a study session or an update.
Yeah, I think we need the city manager to clarify this with all the staff liaison, because I think they have different interpretation of this.
Well, given the fact that you and I basically reformulated these, guidelines together with Katie, all 3 of us are here, so we can kind of, get a sense of like how this, and this entire council has been through this program through the last fiscal year. I don't think that this was necessarily constraining our commission activity.
Some liaisons are constraining the commission.
Well, but I think at the same time, it could inform the activity of each of the commissions and how the liaisons, ultimately take this. But I don't see this as something that definitively constrains it. I mean, do we have any other, staff perspective or input on this? This is a perfectly legitimate procedural point. I mean, from my perspective, it's advisement. I mean, ultimately, we are trying to put the work plans into sync with each other. But if you look at the commissioner handbook, there is the ability to, add something that's like less than 2 hours, right, along the way. So, if a commission chair feels, okay, I really want, something that would take less than 2 hours staff time, I want a volunteer engagement strategy, right? And even though, council basically said that's not one of their priorities, that's something that, I'm interested in as a chair, or a couple of commissioners could suggest. And the constraint we put on it was the amount of time. Now I can envision a staff member pushing back and saying, well, this is explicitly in front of council, that's not one of their priorities. And I think that, just basically based upon bandwidth and the willingness of staff. And then that's just part of the, that's part of the calculus that we go forward with nonetheless, right? I mean, it's not like actual calculus, right? I mean, it's not, you didn't put the derivative in and you just, kind of did the equation wrong. I mean, it's more of an art ultimately, but I no longer see, I do see Councilmember Moore, kind of like, with an expression and shaking her head. I mean, look, I get it. I know that there's not like definitive rules on all of this, but I mean, at the same time, I'm just trying to kind of, cut down on some of these things that we would, be considering, because obviously, you know, only two of us put 1 point, you know, on this. So, okay, I don't see hands raised at this point. Let me just go ahead and ask, you know, for these 2 point, you know, not include operational items, are we okay with taking them off? For our, you know, I see a head nod from Councilmember Way. Just interrupt me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go ahead and nod. I see Councilmember Woolley nodding. A thumbs up from, you know, Councilmember Moore. Okay, so we're gonna take those off in an omnibus motion as well. The 3 point items, I'm seeing one, oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3 items that are not include recommendations. Those are the visitor center, the impacts to schools, and the catalytic converter theft prevention. And the hybrid meeting for city council and commission meetings, that's not ranked. You know, honestly, I think when we get to 3 points, it's sort of sounding like there are, you know, arguments to be made. I mean, Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Mayor Paul, could you please clarify, we just, what numbers did we just remove?
We're still a straw poll. I'm just trying to, like, you know, get to the point where we can identify things that we would put into an omnibus motion.
Okay, but I thought it was 50 and 51 that we.
That is correct, yes. Privately owned EV chargers and volunteer engagement strategy.
Okay, but I'm looking at 49, then this cybersecurity public education. Did we get rid of that already?
No, but staff is recommending that we include that. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying keep 49, Caltrans adopt a highway program. Do we really want to do that?
Yeah, you know, actually, thank you for pointing that out. I would say, given the start that we've, you know, made, and you know, kind of, you know, specifically, you know, council, I mean, and more specifically, you know, me, I mean, I think I pretty much unilaterally managed to get a relationship going with Caltrans. I'm not sure we really need an adopt a highway program. I mean, we have good contacts, you know, people were really happy to see us. We all spent 3 hours cleaning up trash off of 280. I mean, I actually feel like, you know, we've gotten a great start to this kind of interagency. You know, I would vote to take it off, frankly. I mean, I'm not sure that we need the program since we've you know gotten the relationship going in you know, rather a singular manner. That's quite positive. So that would be my suggestion. So thanks for, you know, mentioning number 48. Are people okay with removing number 48 at this point? I mean, you know, it just seems like, yeah. I mean, I get the optical icing, but we've already baked all of the cake. So, all right. You know, honestly, I'm going to stop there because we're, you know, a little past 11:30 right now. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to suggest a motion. I'm going to put this motion on the table, okay? And just understand that, you know, we're at a point where we're under this motion, you know, asking staff to, you know, go back and consolidate, you know, information that they've heard. I would take the Excel spreadsheet, add 2 items with a direction to staff to come up with descriptions based upon our discussion for this housing ownership strategy study session as the first item to add. And then the second item is to modify item 15 to include the staff recommendation for a survey of the senior population. I would further add to that motion that we remove the items that received 1 point that are not recommended, that we remove the items that received 2 points that were not recommended, that we remove line 48, the Caltrans adopted highway program as well. And then that we receive back the then newly formed list of items for a further vote. And so I would ask that we bring this back. This shouldn't take too much, you know, this shouldn't take too much time. My request is that this just be added to the April 19th meeting materials. Okay, so that would, you know, provide roughly a week to get this prepared, and then it would be published in a week and a day, maybe a week and 2 days. And so we would be able to see those as part of the public agenda. And then we would just revisit the voting, at the time that we would have, presumably 5 or 6 days to go over this. So that's my motion. And I do see a hand raised from Vice Mayor Chow, but let me ask if I can get a second for that motion for the purpose of,
Okay,
for
I'll
the
second
deliberation.
that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow, and you do have your hand raised, and so does Councilmember Moore.
Yeah. So, but I'd like to add though, for the DOLA, I'd like to strike the part where it says before another such area can be established. This is where it says, so the justification says trial ended in October and the ongoing program is to be observed for 1 year before another such area can be established. I think it's okay for it to be continue to observe, but another trial doesn't have to wait until the end of observation in Joliman Park. So I hope to strike that part of should I share screen?
No,
And
no,
then-
please don't.
Yeah, and then I hope that
But please.
to add one or two new trials should start as soon as feasible.
Yeah,
And
I
each
don't.
trial should last
Okay.
about 6 months, unless the site is adjacent to an athletic field or playground, or there are other unexpected considerations.
I don't see the language that you're suggesting is in conflict with what's there right now. The revised objective is now standardize the process to create DOLA trial programs with no more than 2 trials running at a time, respond and evaluate community-driven DOLA proposals to implement additional DOLAs throughout the city. So it's much more generalized language right now.
No, look under justification. It's preventing any trial to start until October.
Can you tell me the column, because I'm not seeing?
Column under justification.
Okay, hold on.
Right. The one to the right of the include or not include.
Okay, right.
So the reason for include or not include.
Trial ended October 20. The ongoing program is to be observed. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. Well, the motion's on the table and seconded. So you're asking for a friendly amendment to
strike before another such trial area can be established.
Okay.
So it's implied that a new area could start earlier if it's feasible.
Well, let me hear a comment. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised.
Okay, so my comment was that it wasn't clear that I heard that city-owned properties was in your motion, or if it needed to be. I did not hear it.
I do apologize for that. I missed that, and it was something that I missed. I didn't get to typing it in my notes. I apologize. So that's supposed to be in there. The study session on city-owned properties should definitively be in there. Sorry to kind of cut in line there, Vice Mayor. Will you support that addition as a seconder to the motion before we get to the question? Okay, thank you. So that amended motion is on the table to include the city-owned property study session language and the direction of staff to bring that back. So Vice Mayor Chow, let me, I don't see any comments, or hands raised from our council or staff. I would be okay with that. I mean, in terms of, essentially empowering language to potentially move this up, in time. I do see Councilmember Way with a hand raised.
Yes, I do agree with Vice Mayor Chow's recommendations. And I think that justification is not really the revised objective is what we really look at.
Right.
So I think it's already incorporated, but if Vice Mayor Chow want to make it more specific, I concur with that.
Yeah, well, it does say trial ended in 2021. The ongoing program is to be served for 1 year before another such area can be established. So, I mean, that could be interpreted as going until October 2022, which also, falls within the scope of the fiscal year that we're considering here, and not too far into it, actually, a little bit more than a quarter. Okay, Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is still raised.
So I have another proposal. And so for the housing program for the Anza student, I think I mentioned that I hope that we would restart the home share program. That was paused in 2020. We thought it was ongoing. We approved that, and then it's stopped. So, and then explore BMR or middle income housing funded by the 890 million bond major on or off campus. So we can start that discussion with them.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have a De Anza College student housing item, do we not, on the work plan? And so
it's number 24.
Right.
I'm clarifying. I hope to include these two items.
Okay, so those are your two items for clarifications. I'm fine with that as the movement. But let me hear from Councilmember Moore, who has a hand raised.
Sorry, Mayor Paul, this is a process question.
Yes.
So we've cropped down this list. We're doing some fine tuning on it. Could you please remind me what's going to happen next with prioritization? And are we going to now put a certain number of, you've got a grand total of items. Are we going to put a certain number of 5s and 3s and 1s on here and get a total after this evening? Is that what we're doing?
This matrix, this table is going to be updated. It's going to be published. If this motion passes, it'll be published with the April 19th materials. You'll have 5 to 6 days to review them before the April 19th meeting, and then we will vote at the April 19th meeting. Further than that, I haven't made a suggestion in the motion, but what I would suggest is the same procedure that we had, the 5s, 5 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s, and a tally at that point. And then at that point, I think we make a cutoff. We make a cutoff as to a certain number of items that we stick as priority items on our work plan. So that's what I would suggest as a process moving forward. Councilmember Way?
Just a clarification. So we're going to put our ratings before the meeting, right? So the staff can calculate the points.
No, we're going to be providing the rankings at the meeting. And what I think we should be I think we should be working on a way to make that calculation relatively quickly. It's probably just a matter of making the right modifications in an Excel spreadsheet. We'll figure it out. So that can just be like done via email and a cut and paste relatively quickly after a 5-minute break or something like that. So then our totals could be generated. And I think that as this is going along, it's much appreciated having these Excel spreadsheets, but in terms of the readability factor and like the usability, I mean, that's work in progress as well. But maybe we should have a document that basically puts every item on one page, right? So that we can kind of flip through, somewhat of a larger document and see, each of these things in a more, kind of readable format. I don't know. Maybe people's Excel, kind of savvy is a bit more versed than mine. But okay, I've got 3 hand raised now from Vice Mayor Chow, Councilmember Moore, and Councilmember Way. I'll remind everyone that there is a motion and a second on the table that's been amended. Councilmember Vice Mayor Chow, I went ahead and stated that I'm fine with your amendments. Based on those 2 items, please don't add any more. I'm assuming that you're okay as the seconder and the proposer of those amendments. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I do ask that, I mean it that, let's try to get through item number 13 as well as item number 12 here. So can I call on Councilmember Moore here? Did you have another comment at this point?
I have a question, but it's okay.
Okay, real simple. If the council likes this idea, if we could have just a sheet to vote on, and then the long form sheet where we can read everything out, I think that might help. And if we can have it just the voting sheet, if it can fit on 8.5 by 11, it might take 2 8.5 by 11s because it's kind of a long list. But if we could do that, have a nice little table, just with us, you could probably just take the I guess it's the third column, briefly describes it and let us vote on that. I think we could scrunch it down to a single sheet. And then if we need to read all the details, we'll have the long form spreadsheet. So we'll have a way to do the research if the other council members like the idea.
Okay, I'm fine with creating a uniform and concise voting sheet for the purposes of our use on April 19th. And if staff can, publish that with the materials for April 19th, that will basically provide them a week and a day to generate those documents. Vice Mayor Chow, are you okay with that further instruction as a modification of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Way?
Yes, real quickly, a question for you, because you made a motion. Is there any way we can put in the motion saying that we're not accepting any new proposals and new work plans, even if we have public input or council input?
Let me refer this question to the city attorney. I think that's a good question. I mean, Chris, should we be continuing this if we're basically, as a matter of trying to say we're setting a cutoff in terms of comments and additions of, substantive items? Because then that would perhaps allow us also just to take this, as a continuation of our current discussion, having taken in public input. How should this work process-wise?
Yes, so you can proceed either way. And, I think if the item were continued, we wouldn't necessarily be required to reopen public comment if that were what council desired. But you could certainly, you could vote to cut off adding new items if you wished, if you thought that would be more transparent for the public. Of course, council could always revisit that decision, in the future. It's really at council's discretion to restrict the discussion in that way.
Okay, well, let's add as I'll make an amendment to the motion to restrict new items from being added on after this point. I won't try to continue the item so that we can cut off public discussion. I think we'll see how public comment goes. Because we do have some items that weren't actually, suggested by the public. We probably, would do well to hear what that public has to say about the couple of items that we have added here. So Vice Mayor Chow and then Councilmember Moore. Well, let me go to Vice Mayor Chow first. I suggested an amendment to my motion. Are you accepting of that as a seconder?
Okay.
Great. So no more additional substantive items here. After this, and so you have your hand raised otherwise as well.
Yeah, I actually lost track for the senior strategy. So did the motion include the in-depth survey and the aging at home services, and also maybe elder abuse, which Councilmember Moore mentioned, financial abuse, I think also. So, but I'm not. So, did the motion include that or not?
My motion was based upon what Councilmember Willie was suggesting, that we modify item 15. For inclusion of a survey of the senior population, with a focus on council and commission interaction, because that's what item 15 is about. And what I had included in that is a staff recommendation for those. And so with regard to the fact that the discussion that we had included your comments on that, I do consider that as part of the totality of the consideration of what we're instructing staff to look at for that.
Okay,
So,
great.
so yes, I do consider that as part of the motion.
And then the housing program for De Anza on home share and the housing on or off De Anza site would be considered, right?
Yes, you had already, I think that was the second
Right.
amendment to this
I
motion.
kind of forgot which one was included. But I have one question about the gun safety program. I understand for the homeless jobs program, somehow city staff recommend not include because it needs extra staffing and resource and this stuff. For gun storage, that will need the city staff comment is there is strong opposition there are strong opinions on both sides. This will take a lot of work. If the council strongly desire we should do it, but the city staff recommend include. So I would like to understand why your city staff recommend not include for the job homeless program, which takes minimum effort, and include for this gun safety, which takes a huge amount of effort to research and stuff and outreach.
I'll defer to our director of, or our city manager, Jim True, or our director of community development, Ben Fu, either one.
No, I was just, mine would just be more of a general. I don't know if, Ben is on or, I'm trying to remember now who it would be, but on some of those, the gun piece isn't as difficult because we would be working with the sheriff's department on that one, since they've already been doing that with other cities. So that's not as staff intensive. And I forgot the other one you had mentioned though.
Homeless jobs program.
The homeless one. Yeah, that one on anything in homeless or housing it is just very time consuming. There's so many different facets to it.
I already have a pilot program and we have a consultant working on that. So why is that time consuming and the gun safety not? Gun safety is, there are a lot of legislations that's not within the city scope we'll need to understand before we say.
Okay, Vice Mayor, I'm going to cut off discussion at this point because you're winnowing on one particular item and
Okay.
having a discussion that we really shouldn't be having at this time, especially given the stated time constraints. So and the fact that we have the opportunity on April 19th to bring it up as well.
Okay.
And if you have an opinion on it, it'll be in front of you. You'll be able to assign votes accordingly. Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised and.
Yes, just noticing the time, 11:51. We have items 13, 14, and 15 still on the list.
I understand that and have stated that. So, Madam City Clerk, could you conduct a roll call vote for this motion that's on the table?
Member Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item number 13 is a 5-minute teen commission term cycles item. I think that's essentially clerical. Kirsten, can you condense that to a couple of minutes, kind of get us to the gravamen?
I can try, but I think it's actually longer than 5 minutes, Mayor. But if you'd like, I can certainly proceed with my presentation.
Okay. My understanding is that there are staggered terms and you're making a recommendation for an adjustment of the current terms. Is that essentially what it is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to vote on it, but if people feel like we need more time to consider and take in public comment, that's fine as well. We can always, is this time sensitive, Madam City Clerk, to the extent that we can't consider it on April 19th? I guess that's another piece of information to consider.
I think it is time sensitive. It would push out the teen commission recruitment process probably into the summer months, or council could allow staff to push the recruitment into August before school starts. And when the summer schedules and the summer vacations end for the students to be able to interview.
Okay, Councilman Roy, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So Mayor Paul, we had two options here, and I'm not I'm not really entirely clear what the staff recommendation was for this. If someone could let me know, that would be helpful, or just really quickly summarize what the difference between option 1 and option 2 are.
Okay,
So-
Mayor, maybe I should just go ahead with my presentation for the council.
Why don't you try to get to the summary, because I think we basically have a good setup as to, what the, purpose of this is, which is to
Sure.
get us back in compliance with the municipal code as to the commission.
Okay, so the municipal code requires that the teen commission, the appointments are consist of 2-year terms, and the appointments are made in odd number years, with 5 new appointments being made and 4 new appointments being made in even numbered years. At a certain point in 2011, during the annual recruitment process, back when 12th graders were still appointed to 1-year terms, the council became off balance because, the cycle became off balance because the council made a 2-year appointment instead of a 1-year appointment. And so it resulted in 6 vacancies in the following appointment cycle. So appointments have continued to be based on 6 terms expiring in odd numbered years and 3 terms expiring in even numbered years. So, this year, 3 members of the teen commission have terms that are set to expire. This conflicts with the code, which requires that 4 members be appointed this year. So due to this conflict, staff is requesting direction from council to consider making corrections. One of the options would be to retroactively limit the term of a current commissioner to 1 year, and their term would expire on August 31st of this year. And then we are requesting to authorize staff to proceed with the annual recruitment process, setting the application deadline and interview dates for 4 terms expiring. Application deadline would be May 13, and interview dates would be on May 24th and May 25th. A second option is to direct staff to amend the code, would require an ordinance amendment to set the staggered term appointments at 6 appointments in odd numbered years and 3 appointments in even numbered years, which is where we're at right now. And then authorize staff to proceed with the annual recruitment, but setting the application deadline and interview dates for 3 terms expiring. And the application deadline, because an ordinance amendment would be required, a first and second reading would add an additional 2 months to the process. So it would push the interview dates to August 8th and August 9th.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Clerk. I don't see any members of the public with hand raised, so I'll go ahead and bring this back to council. So let me clarify your first proposal. So are you suggesting that someone or some people have their term shortened until?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yes, we would poll the current members and ask them if anyone is willing to shorten their term by a year.
how many? Just one person will need to do that, or
yes,
multiple? Okay.
One person.
Okay, so one person will need to shorten their term by a year in order to bring us into compliance. Okay. All right, Vice Mayor Chow and then Councilmember Way. Vice Mayor Chow, you're muted.
3 openings and then 6 next year. My proposal is let's recruit 4 this year and then 5 next year. So then we are back in normal for next year. But for 1 year, we will have 1 extra member than normal. And it might violate the municipal code. And if that's okay, that I think is a better solution because we won't cut anyone's term short. Is that legally okay?
Chris, is that, since we're out of compliance right now anyway, is that something that will work?
Right. So we are currently not in compliance with the municipal code. That would be a different type of non-compliance with the municipal code. And so staff is recommending that council come into compliance with the code. But what the vice mayor is proposing is an option.
Well, let me ask you this. Can we, in conjunction with those interviews, as Vice Mayor Chow suggests, if we do that, could we generate a resolution explaining, why we're doing that? I mean, so that we can get into eventual compliance in relatively brief order.
So I'm not sure a resolution would be necessary. I mean, we would just carry forward with the non-compliance. If there's concern is about shortening someone's term, I mean, it would be. I don't believe there's any prohibition on reappointing someone whose term would be shortened for 1 year for an additional 2 years. So they would go from a 2-year term to a 3-year term. But council could consider that at the time of reappointment of the commission.
That's very interesting, and that's good food for thought. We're at 11:59, folks, and we're not going to get this item done. I'm sorry. So I'm going to move that we continue items 13 through 15 to April 19th. May I have a second for that?
Can I just motion and see if that passed?
We don't have time. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
Okay.
If
I
there,
just propose what I proposed.
I mean, if there's a majority will to, I see laughs and head shaking,
Okay.
but I mean, Councilmember Moore, did you want to speak?
Second, just wanted to second motion.
Which one?
To
Mine or?
continue, yours to continue the item. So
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the table to continue this, these 3 items, and then we would be skipping the final unenumerated item before adjournment. So, Councilmember White, did you have a comment on this?
Yes, I agree to extend it, but can we have a little explanation of if we, like Attorney Chris's suggestion, what, can we get that next time? Can we have that in our hands? Or Vice Mayor's suggestion so that we can vote it quickly?
Well, I mean, if they wanted to supplement the staff, report, then they can based upon what we have here, I guess. So, is that feasible, Chris, to do that, to speak to, or is that something that wouldn't be consistent with the motion to continue the item?
Yeah, no, so we can provide additional information if, next time this is heard.
Okay, to consider. Okay, great. Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is raised, but I'm going to call for a
So
vote.
in the meantime, can we pull the team commission? Maybe one person voluntarily would would be willing to shorten because they have too busy a schedule. Then that solve the problem. Let's pull them and see if anyone. Maybe they find this is too boring. They are okay with just doing 1 year.
That actually it changes the nature of the motion that's on the table, Vice Mayor.
Okay, then I'm making an amendment. Can I propose?
I don't know if I can make an omnibus motion that includes, a substantive decision on the item.
Yeah, I think the motion on the table is a motion to continue, and so I don't know if that can be joined with a substantive motion.
But usually when we continue an item, we also have direction to staff to do something, right? I'm not changing the agenda. I'm just making a direction so staff bring back more information. That seems to be something we usually would do.
Yeah, no, I think we've heard council's comments. I'm not sure that it can be part of a motion to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not part of the motion to continue. So you mean I should make a separate motion to give staff direction, or we don't need to vote? If the council agree with this staff direction, is that okay?
I think the council has requested more information, more options. So Kirsten and I will discuss that and come back and try to make sure that you have the information needed to make a decision next time.
So including potentially polling the team commission.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to Kirsten on that.
Yes, I'm happy to check in with the current members.
Councilmember Moore?
Just a quick question, Mayor Paul. Do we have to continue to a date certain, or?
I already included my motion to continue the April 19th meeting.
April 19th. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I had originally said, for these meetings, keep your Thursdays open as well, but, subsequently I've run into some, pushback on that. So I'll just, identify April 19th unless someone from staff, tells me otherwise, that would be, less palatable than continuing this, later this week. So seeing, no calls for comment. Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Way,
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. And a lot of good discussion on a broad range of topics today. So we're at midnight, and so we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. We'll see you on April 15th for our next regularly scheduled council
We
meeting.
don't need to vote to continue the other two items?
That was part of the motion, Vice Mayor.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
I
All
thought
right.
it was just one. Okay, bye.
Meeting adjourned. Good night.